Welcome to this episode of Doug Has Questions. Today, my guest is Charlie DeWitt, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yes.
Welcome, Charlie.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We'll see how many of the legends have some truth behind them.
I'm sure they all do. Good, bad, or whatever.
Good, bad, or indifferent. We're gonna find out.
Yeah.
So let's start off like we do with everybody else. Where did Charlie's life start?
I started in Riverside, California.
Riverside, California.
Born in Riverside.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 years in Riverside, and my parents decided, my dad was from Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was from California, and she was from
Okay.
Riverside. And she came to Alaska in 1942 with the Salvation Army at 17 years old. And her and Dolores Rivet came to
Yeah.
Alaska together, and they served in Wrangell and Juneau.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my mother went back to Wrangell, and that's where she met my father.
Okay.
And he was a fisherman. My grandfather gave them a fishing boat for their wedding present.
Yeah.
The Leaf H was the name of the boat.
Like a gill net boat, or is it a troller?
It was a seiner.
Seiner.
And
Okay.
it was not really big enough to be a seiner. It was kind of a troller combination halibut boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they towed a scow with the net on it. And they set the net off of this scow that they towed and set it out and pursed it in, and then they pursed the fish into the Leaf H, and they'd pretty much leave the scow anchored, where the openings were. Just leave it, and they'd run into the cannery where, whether it be, I think they were fishing on Prince of Wales most of the time then.
Okay.
And yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and so then they just go back out to the.
They'd
take
go
the
back
net
out
off
to the scow and get their net and go fish another opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though it was a little small for a seiner, they figured out a way to make it
I
work.
got to figure that most of the seiners at that time, this was in the 40s, Doug. Were pretty small compared to what they are today.
Yeah.
Yeah. A big seiner back in the day. My dad told me they had a boat called a Sanko, and it was like a 45 foot. And I think the Leaf H was right at 40 feet.
Well, that's pretty small to have a seine net on the back of that.
Yep. And they made a living anyway. He trolled and halibuted and did everything like that. And then they had some really bad years in the late 40s, and they just couldn't make a go of it. So my mother's parents were elderly, and her mother was not doing very well at all, and in fact she deceased during that time. Anyway, she went back to help take care of her, and my dad went and he got a job working for the city of Riverside, and he was a tree trimmer, or tree topper. He'd go up to these trees, and
Really?
eucalyptus trees, palm trees, they'd climb them and cut all the limbs off and do all that stuff. And it was him, and he had a bunch of Mexican friends down there. And, he was telling me that, the first time he met these Mexicans, my dad was pretty dark colored.
They probably thought he was one of them.
They'd start talking to him in Mexican, and he'd say, que pasa, or not que pasa, I'd clink it. He'd say, what are you talking about? And they'd go,
We thought you were one of us.
yeah, but they got along real good. And I mean, we went back in 1964 when my dad graduated. He was going to seminary school in San Francisco, the Salvation Army school for officers training.
Mm-hmm.
And we went back and we went through Riverside, and we reunited with all his friends, and that I'd never. I couldn't remember him because we left when I was about 2 or 3. And they just treated him like he was one of their brothers. It was really great. He had a great time. Anyway, we left in.
So was it when your dad and mom got married? Is that what got your dad interested in joining the Salvation Army, or
yes,
was he already?
It was. He was already in the Salvation Army, but
Okay.
When my mother came there and she was the officer, in charge there. Yeah, that, and then they went, they served all over the place. They went to Saxman, when we went back, we went to Ketchikan, and they took over the Saxman Corps. There was a little Salvation Army church out there at Saxman, and mostly, native people that, had been in the Salvation Army forever, My dad knew them all, my mother knew them all, and we took over the Corps there. And then when my dad decided that he was going to become an officer, and I think it was in '62, he started going to the officers training, and my mother stayed in Ketchikan because we had a home.
Mm-hmm.
The old school in Saxman, my dad and her had converted into a retirement, not retirement home, but a old folks home. We had 16 or 17 people there.
Uh-huh.
And they did the same thing here, Doug.
Yeah.
When we had over in Port Chilkoot, we had 36 people over there.
Where was that at in Port Chilkoot?
In the officers' row up there. I don't know I don't remember the number.
But it was one of the officers' houses.
Yeah, it was next to Ted Gregg's house. The one.
Okay. When was that, Charlie?
1969. We had 6 people. The reason why we came to Haines was the Salvation Army sent my dad here from Cake
Mm-hmm.
To build a new church.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that built the one off of Union here.
And it was a Lindell cedar, and I ain't so sure that they didn't buy it from you guys.
I was gonna say my dad probably had something to do with that.
Yeah, because I worked for your dad quite a bit, off and on. He'd buy, like he'd get a Lindell cedar home, and that's what my job was. I'd go unload it all, take it out of the van, and do that stuff. But I don't know, where this one came from. But I knew that your dad did a lot with Lindell.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several places in town. The
Matthews's,
the old duplex
duplexes
off 4th
up
Avenue.
here. Dr. Feldman's house, or was Herb Gulliford's.
Herb Gulliford's.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Marty Comerford's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
All of them were Lindell Cedars.
So you came here in '69, or you
67.
were 67?
I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
Yep. And I was.
And you'd been in Cake before that?
Yep. We went in Cake, and as soon as my dad got done with officers training, they shipped him to Cake, and we stayed there till '67.
Yeah. So you've gotten to live in quite a few different places in the Southeast, started in Ketchikan, then Cake, and then to Haines.
And that's it. I found Haines, and I said, I'm not leaving.
But did that become an issue then? Because usually with the Salvation Army, they move their officers around.
That's why my dad got out of it. They wanted him to move to Prince of Wales or somewhere else, and he said, no, my son's in high school. He likes the school. We like the people here in Haines.
Yeah.
We're going to do something different, because as soon as we graduated, in fact, I graduated in '73, and my sister graduated in '77, but in '75, they said, well, we're ready, because, the home they had over here, they bought it from Carl Heinmiller, and they were paying Carl Heinmiller, and they had paid quite a bit, but, the fuel bill, I remember burning 3,000 gallons a month.
What?
Yeah, to heat that whole big building.
Well, yeah, because they weren't very well insulated from the Army days.
I remember working. We tore out all the lath, because that north side, we tore out all the lath and put all sheetrock, and insulated all that. I remember painting, Doug, painting for days and days and days, on ladders, to paint that house. But no, that was the really cool thing about it was, when I would go play in a basketball game, my dad, sometimes he'd have to make 2 trips, because all these.
Everybody that was saying
everybody would come. I had my own section, They would go they were all stayed in the balcony, up above in the old gym, Doug, they had the balcony, and then, because it was easy, because you came in off, and you didn't have to go down. You had to go downstairs to get down in the bleachers, and usually that was so plugged that you couldn't find it. So they all stayed upstairs, and it was pretty cool. They'd all, good job, grandson. They all called me grandson. There was Fritz Willard, from Cluckwan, and John H. Willard, and, there was a lot of people.
So how long did they do that for?
They did that from, like I said, in '68. Where Mitch Clayton lived, the old log cabin out at the end of Mud Bay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had 6 people in there.
Okay. And
then when we moved out of there in '69 or '70, Doug, I don't know the day exactly, but we went in, and we started into that place, we only had acquired half of it,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
northern half of that,
Mm-hmm.
from Carl, and we renovated, and got the Bud Sandstrom came over and worked on the furnaces, and and then when we bought the whole thing, we actually put new furnaces in both sides, and that was a major job to get everything down through the almost had to disassemble the furnace to get it in there. But they were cool places. I remember I had like upstairs in the attic, they were, I don't know, 60 or 70 feet. I had pellet gun traps, and
Of course you did.
yeah, it was a heck of a life. Yeah.
So how did you meet my dad and mom? Were
Well,
they teaching?
the first time I went to high school here, I walked in, and there was your dad. And I mean, he treated you so well, you automatically liked him. If you worked hard, and I'm one of them guys that likes a pat on the back, and he would give you a pat on the back and tell you were doing a good job. And I don't know, I just he was a great guy. I mean, plus he loved guns.
So where did your love of guns in the outdoors start? Was that something that when you were growing up, did your dad take you hunting and fishing as a kid?
Not a lot, Doug. I remember I shot my first deer in Cake. We were going to get a Christmas tree, and Daniel, Paul, and my dad were sitting down, and we were all sitting down, and my dad always had a lunch, and we had a sandwich, and we were sitting there drinking. They had a thermos of coffee, and I never, nobody drank water back then. They were drinking coffee, and I wasn't. I was young, and Daniel sat down, and he, had his deer call, and he was blowing it, and he'd be BSing and blowing his deer call, and here comes a buck, and my dad had my uncle 30 M1 carbine, and that's what he was carrying, and he handed it to me, and I shot it right in the head. Boom. It was only 40 feet away. Yeah. And that we never had much for guns. I had an old Stevens 22. You had to pull back the bolt, and I mean, you couldn't. I remember when I first got it, I couldn't hardly pull the bolt back, to make it fire. It didn't cock, like a regular gun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I started liking guns, because we did that hunter safety with your dad, in the Port Chilkoot building over there that burned.
Yep.
That was where we did the hunter safety, and that was pretty much my first experience. And then I remember going into study hall, and in this school, they had a subscription to the National Rifleman.
Okay.
So you'd get that, and because back in 67, it was still legal to buy guns, directly from whatever company, Hunter's Lodge or whatever, and you'd look in them books, and oh my God, it's only $12,
$12
for a 30-06 Springfield 1903 or whatever, a little Martini Cadet or Remington Rolling Block or whatever. It was pretty reasonable. And I remember, going into study hall and, oh my God, looking at them magazines, every new, you'd always wait for the new month to show up, and, oh, what's new,
So as you're getting more interested in that, were you visiting my dad's shop in the old A-frame up at their house where you own it now, but he kind of had his little spot up there where he's doing reloading
he's the
and
one,
everything? He's
the one, I said, I want to learn how to reload, and he'd go, come on up, I'll show you, and we loaded shotgun shells, and, I remember I had been reloading for maybe 6 months or whatever, and he says, hey, Norm Blank needs some 300 H&H's. He can't find them anywhere. I have the dies, and I have the, he's got the brass. Could you load him up some shells? And I go, I get it. And Norm goes, oh, it worked great. It killed the moose.
Killed the moose. Perfect.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I owe a lot to your dad. I remember the first gun that I bought from him. I was in 7th grade, and
7th grade, you bought a gun.
Yeah. I just
what
walked
was
in.
it?
It was a Seiko 222 that Austin Hammond had, traded to your dad or sold to your dad because he, traded it for something else. Yeah. Anyway, I got it, and I meant, wow, I'm all set now, because they were paying $7.50 for a seal nose,
just for the
bounty.
For a bounty.
Yeah.
$7.50.
$7.50. That's how I mean, I trapped out at Mud Bay when we lived out there in '68, and I don't know how many coyotes I caught, Doug, but that was $15. That was a lot of money for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so was that kind of the trapping and everything of the coyotes? Was that your first?
Yeah, I had never trapped anything before then, and I just put out snares. I read the Hawbaker's book on trapping. Okay, it's got to be this big a hole and this high off the ground. And I didn't. That's about the only. I never even caught a mink. I don't think. I remember putting mink traps on the beach and not having anything. Because I didn't really know what I was doing, and until in '69, I think I got involved with Snuffy Smith. Snuffy and I became very good friends, and then I started going with Squeak and him. He'd say, "Hey, we're going to go out behind the lake today. You want to go?" Yeah, oh yeah, And
so Squeak didn't just train Stuart; he trained Stuart's dad too.
He trained me too, and I mean, he was an artist. That man, I have never seen a man take care of fur like him. I mean, Stuart. I always, told him, I said, you make them, when him and Ryan, trapped after that, and I would go, I had snowmobiles, and we'd go up behind the lake, and pretty much everywhere that was not being trapped by somebody else, up the highway, Porcupine, and when they got fur, Squeak was still alive then, and he would take them in there, and he would, he was like, boy, you better do this right. He was a real stickler about his fur quality, and that one year, Stuart and them, I don't know if he said something to you or not, but he got that one marten that was the top lot of the whole sale. North American Fur Auctions. It was $650 for a marten.
He was telling us about
and
that.
You know
That's
what? Because they wanted their feet chopped off.
Yeah.
And I would never, and Squeak wouldn't either. He wanted them things. If you wanted to mount them, they were mount ready. And, splitting the toes and doing all that stuff and the ears, And he was, his fur was the finest.
Yeah, he was pretty adamant about it being done right.
And he had all of his knives, and he, when you catch an otter, I remember one year, Tim Twilliger and I were trapping down towards Battery Point. We caught 6 otters that year, and God, it took us 10 hours to do an otter, to flesh out the tail. And I remember the first time I went over to Squeak when they were doing an otter, it was like they skinned it out, and they had a pole that this thing fit on, it was about this big around, and it tapered up to the shape of an otter. And he took these Schick razors and he ground the safety off of them. And he would shave them things. He could do an otter in an hour. And the whole thing, stretched. Yeah, it was amazing. Because their tails, they're flat, and they have the fat pockets on the side. They're so difficult to get the fat out of there, But Squeak, man, he could shave them. Yeah, and Ryan and Stuart, they both, they learned a lot from him. He was a true artist with trapping. That's how he got here, Came up here to trap with Alex,
Okay.
Ed Alex.
When was
that? Because Ed Alex, I guess, was in the 40s.
40s?
Yeah, after the war, he served in the war.
Yep.
And after the 40s, Ed said, I'm going to Alaska. And Squeak, was single. And yeah, I'm going to Alaska with you. That's how they ended up here. But yeah, he was an artist. There isn't anybody, and Ryan still has all of his stuff, and it's all in the same spot.
Same spot?
Yeah. It's
good.
Pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah.
So what else were you doing so you started having this love of outdoors, and that turned your trapping, your hunting, your fishing. What was school like for you? What were you interested in school?
PE.
PE?
In history. I tell you,
history?
Your dad, everybody thinks of all these history items, and it just sunk in the way he taught, and maybe I don't know why, but I really paid attention, and I did really well in his classes, better than all the other classes that I was taking. And yeah, it was, I don't know. He was just a very, because I think he actually cared about history. I mean, he would tell you intricate parts of it that made you, and your assignments wouldn't be this dull, whatever. It would be, some particular thing about, what cannons did they use, or, what rifles did they use? Where did the South get their rifles from? And, you talk to Henry about that stuff, because Henry's quite a history buff himself. And yeah, I don't know. I've got books and books. When Carl Ward died and they had the garage sale at his place. Yep. They said, oh, he's got a bunch of gun books. So I went up there to look at them, and it was all from the Civil War, and I bought all of them. I mean, and I, consumed quite a few of them, but not all of them, because I mean, they're 800 pages. Oh, this Snyder rifle, was used by the South, because they didn't like, yeah, it's and it was probably the best gun of the whole Civil War, yeah, but yeah, it was I don't know, I liked PE. Because your dad got me started in on the presidential, and
presidential fitness.
Yeah, I was the presidential for 6 years. I did it, when I didn't have PE. I just took the test, and I was proud that I could do it.
So that gets us to one of the legends of Charlie DeWitt. Was it your senior year where you go to the track meet in the Southeast Regional track meet, and by yourself you took second place? No? When was it?
My sophomore year.
Your sophomore year.
I said, I'm going to the track meet. I had run around and I was throwing a shot put a little bit. Nobody really did anything about it,
So there wasn't a track
There was no track team.
No track team.
Yeah. And I said, well, I'm going to the meet. So I go to the meet and I go in and sign up. And they said, well, are you unattached? And I go, no, I'm Haines. And I didn't know what they meant by unattached, I thought, because basically if you went unattached, you never made any score. All you did was do your running. I said, no, I'm Haines. And they didn't say, where's your coach or anything like that.
So you just went down by yourself?
Went down by myself.
In Juneau?
In Juneau.
In Juneau.
Yeah.
So what events did you compete in?
I competed in the 100 and the 200, the shot put, and the long jump.
Long jump?
Yeah.
And you got first.
I got third in the long, or I shouldn't say that. I got third in the shot put.
Okay.
And then I got second in the long jump and fourth or fifth in the 100 and the 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember somebody saying, "Huh, I didn't know we had a track team, but we're in second or third place or something like that." And I got home and Carl Ward comes up to me and he goes, "Thank you." And after that, Carl said, "We're getting a track team together." And we did. We got a track team together. And, from then on, I think we were the closest team. Well, I shouldn't say that. I coached track, for 5 years. But we were the closest team to Juneau. We had only lost to Juneau by like 5 points our senior year.
Okay.
And we didn't have pole vault. And they'd get 1, 2, and 3 in pole vault. So we had a heck of a track team. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I was.
So you were the reason we started a track team, and wasn't Stewart the first member of the Haines Dolphins?
Yes.
So carrying on the legacy. Now, when are your grandkids? What are they going to start?
I don't know.
Got to see what they come up with here.
I have no idea. I working on Lucas. I don't know. I think he's a fisherman.
I know he's a fisherman.
We went down to the dock today, and he goes, "Papa, can you take me and Liam to the dock?" And I go, "Yeah, okay." So we went down there, and the Nash kids showed up.
Of course.
And so I'm jigging herring, and I had 6 on at one time, flipped them in the bucket, and another, you had to wait for them. They were like in surge, they were just going and milling around, and and you go for 30 minutes, wouldn't have a herring, and then you'd get 5 or 6, and then I couldn't keep up. You know,
Kids are using the bait faster.
Oh
than you
yeah,
can
because
catch
I'm
'em.
going. Oh my God, this is. You know, they were the perfect size for trolling. You know, we got trolling coming up, and I'm going. I'm going to take these home and salt them because I figured I'd get a half a bucket or something. You know.
Yeah.
And like I said, I couldn't keep up. They're over there. Can I have another herring? I'd go $1 a herring, and the kids are reaching in their pockets, you know, and
I bet.
and pulling out dollars. I go, get out of here, take a herring, you know, and yeah, because I had them in the bucket, and they were just swimming around in the bucket, you know, and they were like, ooh.
Good bait.
Yeah, and then I mean, I don't know. They must have caught $20 or $30, you know, and they just turned most of them loose.
Yeah, those kids, I see them all summer long
Yep.
coming in looking for fishing lures.
Yep.
They love.
You know what
to be
they love
down
the
there
best,
fishing.
Doug?
What's that?
Castmaster.
Castmaster.
Yep, they're the best hook for them, or at least they think, you know, because of all the kids down there, Liam had got a tackle box for Christmas or his birthday or whatever, and he had all these lures, you know. They were just a stamp whatever, and everybody else, all the rest of the kids, the regulars, all had Castmasters. Yeah.
Well, Lucas last year, he came in and told me, he goes, you don't have the right color. And so he told me I need to get a new color, and so I got it this year just for him. So I told him this
Is
spring.
it the green ones?
I said it's kind of like a brown trout looking, and I was like, Lucas, I got you. And his eyes got big, and he's like, oh, all right. And I think he's got a couple of them.
Well, I think
already,
he's lost them all already.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Because he was using Liam's hooks today.
What? Oh, was he?
Yeah. And I mean, he had some, you know, and they must have been 24 or 25 inch, just big
Just nice big
monsters.
monsters?
Oh, yeah. In fact, he goes, I'm keeping one. I go, for what? I'm going to eat it. And they go, really? Who's going to cook it for you? He goes, somebody.
I haven't figured that out yet, but I'll find somebody that's hungry.
Yeah. You know, them kids, they have a wonderful life. I was talking to a guy today, and he goes, God, wouldn't you like to be 10 again? I go, yes, that was the funnest. You know, well, I was in Cake when we'd do that, and I remember we'd go down on the dock, and we'd spend hours and hours down there. I mean, the highlight of my whole early career, you know, 10, 11, 12, we were sitting on the Cake dock, you know, looking, and we saw this halibut. It must have been 8 foot long. It just came right up over the dock thing and went right under the water, you know, and everybody out there trying to. I'm going, what are you going to do with that if you catch it? You know, because back then the kids, you know, none of the kids in Cake had a fishing pole. They all used hand lines. Yeah. You know, and I mean, it was all seine twine. They used the same thing, you know, when the humpies would come in the creek at Gunnock Creek there in Cake. You know, that's what they would do. They'd give there was an old gal, her name was Gunnatine, and, you know, that was her Indian name, Mrs. Friday, if I remember right. But they'd take and, you know, catch humpies out of the creek, you know, they called them a jigger. It was 3 big halibut hooks, you know, wrapped together. Yeah, and they'd, you know, you'd throw it out on the bottom, and then when you'd see a fish go over the line, you know, you'd try to snag it, you know. But I remember taking her fishing, because she used to make these salmon eggs, Doug, that were smoked, you know, the whole skein.
Smoking them, huh?
Oh, my God, were they good.
Just a light smoke on them? Or
No. They were smoked for
really
a week.
For a week,
or
really?
longer. I mean, the eggs were just minute. They had shrunk so much. Oh, it was like eating cheese, you know, like smoked Gouda cheese. I mean,
Have you ever tried to replicate that?
No, I never have.
I wonder
You
how
know,
she did that.
she just brined them in salt and then just hung them up, you know, in her
the
smokehouse and just pretty much forgot about them.
Until they were done.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they ever, you know, weren't done. You know, I mean, yeah, they were fantastic.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, he'd smoke.
I remember, speaking of fishing as kids, we'd go down to the docks, and then my dad would take us out to Letnikoff every once in a while looking for flounders. But for a couple summers, I'd go out to on Sawmill Road, you know, the culvert there right before you get to the cemetery.
Cutthroat City.
Oh, big time with Frank Shull
when
and
they're
Shane,
in there.
Frank Shull and Shane Martin, man. We'd spend hours casting out in there and catching fish.
Well, when I was young, you know, I started, you know, working at the housing land, you know, in 67.
Okay.
I'd go haul bags, you know, that's all I basically did, you know, and I worked for Carl Heinmiller through the the youth program they had. You know, I could work 30 hours, but I would go over and haul bags. You know, I'd go haul bags. You know, we all did bags at 5 in the morning, so we'd go over there and do that, and we'd be done by 7. I'd go to work at Heinmiller's for 8. You know, I worked for Ole Erickson over at the Chilkat Center when they were remodeling that. We put the theater room in there.
Okay.
And I remember working for Ole we had ladders going up because some of the slate tiles were gone, you know, and Ole sent me up there. I am 13, you know, had a rope tied around me, and he was on the other side, you know, and ladders going up there, changing them slate tiles. And running a chainsaw. I never do with a chainsaw. I didn't know a chainsaw won't cut rocks. You know, I'd go, holy, this thing won't cut anything. And he goes, it won't cut rocks. Yeah. The old guys that were here, pretty, you know, I worked for Ole quite a bit after that. You know, I worked on the sawmill, and then when I got my finger screwed up, I was supposed to go to work on the new school when they built the new school over here. But
That was what, 76 when they built the school?
Yeah. I came and stayed at the A-frame. You
That's
remember
right.
that?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
That was the thing, because, oh crap. There's been several people that have stayed there over the years. Don Phillips was there.
Robert Burlett.
You were there. Then there's a guy from, when they were building the breakwater down here, there's a guy that was staying up there, and he was a trucker, and I distinctly remember he got fired, and he was complaining about it, and my grandpa Hub asked me, so what happened? He goes, well, I was just sitting there waiting to be loaded, and a rock came down and hit my fuel tank, and they blamed it on me, and my grandpa's like, well, I shouldn't have been parked there.
Yeah.
With him, it was like, well, if you're in the truck, it's your fault. Doesn't matter what happened.
Yeah,
but I remember that guy. I wasn't that old, but I remember him just looking like, wait, you're supposed to be taking my side. And I was thinking, good luck on that one, dude.
No. It's always your fault. If, you know, Hub, I don't know. Hub and I go way back too, you know, because I worked with Hub when I worked for your dad when I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
On the garbage truck. Guess who was driving the garbage truck?
Grandpa Hub.
Yep. And I mean, I remember we went to the food center, and that's when Fresca and Tab, you know, I had that, I forget what the sweetener was that was supposed to kill you, you know, and we loaded the whole back of the garbage truck up with food center's stock of Fresca and Tab. And I go, you want me to crush it, Hub? And he goes, no, we're not going far. We drove down the road over here, took it all out of the back of the garbage truck and stacked it in there. And I go, Hub, that stuff's supposed to kill you. He goes, when? Yeah.
So that was over. He put it in his place over
right here. You know, we had the big shed out the side. Yeah. Paul Nelson and I were the ones that were working on the garbage truck. You know, we both were on the back. You know, because we'd go to the fog cutter. You know, every other day it was 2 dumpsters full of beer bottles and cans. You know, it was crazy the amount of beer that flowed through this town.
That was the mill days, right?
Yep.
That was when you had 2 mills.
2
going
mills
and everything.
and logging going on in the woods and fishing and it was.
So at 15, you're on the back of a
garbage truck, hanging on the back end, pulling up, you know, dumping cans, you know. And Paul would take one side, I'd get the other side, and Hub sat in there, you know.
Yeah, that still amazed me the way he was able to drive a stick shift with only a left arm.
You know, and he had his leg. I don't know what was wrong with his leg. I don't know if it was neuropathy or what, you know, because he was diabetic. I don't remember
either, but he did have issues with the leg.
And, you know, I don't know if it was something to do with the incident that caused his, you know, I don't know. But, God, that guy could work. I tell you what. I mean, he never stopped, you know. He was I loved Hub because, you know, after I went to school, you know, and, you know, Hub said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to become our diesel mechanic. He said, good choice, you know, and after I'd, you know, gone to school and went to work and stuff like that, Hub would call me up, you know, come over here, you know, I'm building a new stove, and my eyes ain't as good as they used to be. Can you help me weld this? Yeah, I can, Hub. And then I was talking to Hub about, we were working on, we had all these Euclid trucks, up on the North Slope, and the only way you could get the brakes freed up, they'd get frozen to adjust the brakes, is you had to get a long punch, and I got, man, I don't have a long punch, and Hub sit there and walks through the shop in there, and he comes out with this big long punch, and he goes, I got this in 1942 or whatever. He said, I had the blacksmith make it, Yep. And that was the best punch. I still have it. Yep. It was the best punch I ever had because they had little star wheels, and you had to tap them to turn them to adjust the brakes on these big Euclids, And he gave me that punch, and, that was pretty a good treat.
So I remember my dad telling me that he tried to get you to go to University of Minnesota to play football. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
He had you a walk-on spot.
Yeah. Well, he did, and then I had another walk-off spot actually, it was a kind of a scholarship at Chico State.
Yeah.
In California through RV,
Okay. RV had gotten that.
And it was with Coach Reelman, and man, I just, I didn't have any money. I mean, all of my life, I never had, if I wanted anything, I'd have to go work for it. I remember days where, what I do with, because you get $30 a week, and if you had a car, that was a couple fill-ups, and, and I liked guns so much that, I would spend most of that year that in 1974, I worked for your dad when he built the sport shop. Mm-hmm. And my paycheck was like $1,100, and my gun bill was $1,038.
He knew who to hire. He knew he was going to get it all back.
Yeah, I bought a Remington, because I had been down there the year before, and my auto teacher, because I went to school to be a diesel mechanic, and
Where'd you go to school?
Port Angeles, Peninsula College,
okay.
And right off the bat, I could tell that they had a new instructor in the diesel program, and he just, I wasn't impressed with him. Mm-hmm. And this Doug Gilliland, Doug.
Yep.
Anyway, he just seemed more outgoing. And I mean, you walked into his office, and he had, not a big office, probably 12 by 16 or something like that. And the whole wall, all the way around, was covered with certificates from General Motors. I mean, he had, he started working for General Motors in 1953. And he had every certificate that General Motors had. Yeah. And I mean, he knew his stuff. And he had worked in Alaska, Doug. He came up here in 1948, and did logging stuff, and, mostly.
So he was your main instructor down at college?
He was the automotive instructor.
Because
I went and signed up as a diesel instructor class, and I didn't even go. I think I went one semester, and I transferred to the automotive program because I could tell,
just working with
Doug, he was just, his general knowledge of everything was way, way better, and he conveyed it a lot better than this kid. The other guy he went to Oregon Tech, and he had only been out of school like a year.
Okay.
And Doug was, he could just look at it and say, oh yeah, that's what's wrong with it, And
so where did you get all your diesel training then? Because that's a lot of the mechanics you've done since is all in diesel stuff.
Well, I keep telling these kids today, Doug, I worked for Kiewit. I was in supervision with Kiewit. Mm-hmm. And I go, all you have to do is show up with an attitude that you want to work. And they'll train you to do everything.
Yep.
Anybody that can see that you're a good employee is going to train you. I started out working.
So you were at Peninsula till 76. Was that a 2-year program?
Yep.
And so in 76, you came back to Haines then?
I actually was 75, Doug.
75?
And I went to work right away. I went to work for Morrison Knutson out of Tonsina, and I worked with an old guy that was a welder. And he would just, I don't want to train you nothing because you're going to steal my job. And, you know, I worked there for 6 months and was one of the last guys that they laid off. And I figured I'd go right back. Well, I went to, you know, I came home for Christmas, got married, went on a honeymoon and did whatever. And I went back and said, hey, I'm ready to go back to work. And they said, we don't have anything. So I went to the hall, and the hall said, well, okay. So they sent me to Valdez as an oiler. And I worked as a rig oiler on a backhoe and a crane with a couple guys from Minnesota. And, you know, they treated me really well. You know, the guy that was the oiler boss down there was one of the Knutson kids, and sadly, he was killed down there. You know, that year that I left, you know, was would have been 76. Yeah, 76 in the spring. The snow slid off of one of them big storage tanks down there. You know, probably 6-8 feet of snow, and he was going by in a pickup, and it crushed him.
Oh, geez.
But anyway, I'm working in Valdez, and I get this call, you know. Hey, my wife says, John Jennings wants you to call him. So I called John Jennings, and John says, hey, we're looking for help. You know, you're going to be right at home, and we know we got a couple-year job. So that's when I said, okay. So I gave him my 2 weeks notice and came home, and I went to work for AIC, you know, under John and, you know, Chauncey Craig and real good guys, and learned a lot there too.
What project was that?
That was the Haines Highway
Doing the
paving
Haywire
projects.
when we were doing that in mid-70s?
We did it out to 4 Mile, out to the ferry terminal, and then we did 3 miles right there at the Mosquito Lake corner. They did 3 sections, 1 mile long of friction course, you know, to see which course of asphalt gave the best friction, you know, for driving, for traction. Yeah, we did that in November.
You're paving in November?
Yeah. And I didn't tell you the story. Anyway, so I'm working for AIC over here, and they said, oh, John says, you're going to the asphalt plant. Okay. So they had this guy that knew the asphalt plant real well. He had run it before that. Anyway, this guy named Freeland was running it, and Lloyd Schillings was the superintendent. And one day I'm there at, you know, because I go to work at 5, and I'd have all the oil flowing in the whole plant and have everything circulating and all that stuff. You know, start the generator, check the generator, do all that stuff. And 7 o'clock comes, and there's 20 trucks out there, you know, sitting there waiting to get asphalt. And, you know, 7:30 comes and no operator. And 8 o'clock comes and no operator. And Lloyd comes up to me and says, can you run this thing? And I go, I don't know, Lloyd. Maybe. So I remember, you know, I had watched him start it, you know, and knew all the procedures to do it pretty much. But a couple things I didn't know because, you know, I didn't know how to, you know, you had to have the fans to draw the material through. You had to have them set at a certain place. Well, anyway, this plant had issues. It wouldn't start. So I'd have to go out there with the butane torch and start it every morning, you know.
Okay.
And I remember I'd go, well, I'm going to need some help, you know, to get it started. And I go, well, send Jerry Fredrickson over. So here comes Jerry, and he goes, what do you want me to do? I said, put that torch up there and start it. You know, put it right there, and I'll hit the burner button, and it'll start, you know. And okay, so he gets up there, and I hit the burner button, and woof, the flame comes out the back, singes all of Jerry's hair off because I didn't have I go, oh, crap, I got to have the damper open. I turned the damper open and, you know, ran the plant the rest of the day. And, you know, Freeland showed up about 10 o'clock, and he goes, what are you doing in my seat? And I go, I guess running the plant. Well, Lloyd saw him pull in, you know, and pulled in behind him and goes, Freeland, you don't work here anymore.
Oh, gee.
You already cost us. He said, and that kid, he's only been doing it for 6 or 8 weeks, and look at, He's already doing it.
Already doing
and he
it.
shows up.
He was here on time to
Yeah.
fill the trucks.
Yeah. So, yeah, after that, I ran the asphalt plant for him for 3 years. I ran it, down in Gus Davis. We did a paving job there, and then we went to King Salmon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excuse me, McGrath. Well, we did King Salmon too, but that was a different time. McGrath, and we paved that runway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been an interesting life.
So after AIC, did you come back to Haines for a while? Because what years were you shop teacher here?
I was there from 80 to 85.
80 to 85.
79, 80, 80 to 85.
So what brought that on? Where you wanted?
Well, I was gone all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. My poor wife. She was trying to raise kids, and I go, well, I have to try this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working for AIC, the same company I'd worked for them for 19 years, I think, mostly on the slope. And I got all the remote jobs. I mean, if there was a remote job, they were sending Charlie. Because, I didn't have a problem. I could live wherever they put me. If they put me in a Wanigan, for whatever, it didn't make any difference to me. I was happy to be there working. And, yeah, it was pretty crazy way to go. But anyway, like you said, I said I wanted to spend some more time with my family. And, because my kids were growing up, And they said, okay, whenever you want a job, you call. So I worked every summer, Doug.
So you're teaching here, and
as
then
soon
the
as
summer,
I left here,
as
I'd go to Prudhoe Bay or wherever they sent me.
Yeah.
Little Diomede,
That's what I was going to ask. Is that when you went to Little
Yep.
Diomede? What was that like
1982.
out there, right next to the Russians?
It was pretty cool, really, because, they had a little National Guard, a little shed up on the hill, and they had these binoculars that were like this long, and they had a pedestal out there, they sat on a pedestal out the building, and this Roger Pan, he said, hey, come up here and check this out. They had guns, M14s all the way around, boxes and boxes and boxes of ammunition. And so, he comes up here and goes, let's go look. And we go look, and you could see over to Big Diomede, and there was, like these towers that, the Russians had there, and you could look over there and you could see them, looking at you.
They're looking at you.
We were putting in, I think they were 15-foot corrugated metal pipes, and we would go all the way down to hard ground, and then we'd fill them all the way up with rocks. First of all, Doug, we'd pour a 2-foot solid concrete foundation in them, and had rebar and everything else in them, and then we'd fill them full of rocks. Some of them were probably 18, 20 feet. And we had all these Eskimo guys. We didn't have anything really, we had a dozer. We didn't have a loader or anything like that. And we'd put pallets on the front of the dozers. I made a couple little forks and fill them up, and then we'd take them, drive them up there, and throw all these rocks into these big, huge culverts. And then we had to fill them to 2 feet from the top, and then we had to fill them full of grout. We had a little
for what
1 yard for foundations.
That was a foundation
for the whole school.
Oh, okay. You're building the school.
Yeah.
So how deep were these things?
That's what I said. Some of them depended on the bottom, but Ernst Olson was out there and he'd dig till he got to bedrock.
Yeah.
And then we'd put this thing up there, and then we'd pour, dam it up as best we could, pour the grout in there, and pour 2 feet of concrete in the bottom. We had these super sacks of concrete.
Yeah.
And it was.
Holy cow. How big a school was that?
Oh, it wasn't, wasn't anything huge. There was, 135 kids.
135 kids. And going, dang. So
they already had a school there, but it was a one-room school. It had a kitchen on the right, and then the schoolroom was out in front, and it took 1K through 8,
In what years? Was that 81, 82?
That was in 81.
81.
Yeah, or excuse me, 82.
82.
Yeah, in 82, and that's what we did. We just did the foundation, and after we had the foundation, they sent me to, I think I might even came home and went to work, because that's when Tiffany was born. I came home and went to work for Rudy Bellardi up here in Cluckwan. They were putting in new water and sewer up there.
Okay.
Yeah. But I worked every year, That one year I worked 24 hours a day. I shouldn't say I worked. I got paid 24 hours a day because we were doing the sea lift. I had a shift for 3 weeks. I had a shift of we did the approaches when they brought a barge in.
Where was this at?
This was at Prudhoe Bay.
Prudhoe Bay. Okay.
Yeah, we had to. They bring these ships in, or these barges. They'd bring them in, and we run a grader barge up there that smoothed the bottom out so that the barges could sit without any obstructions or rocks or whatever. Which there wasn't any rocks up there at all anyway. But we had this grader barge that went back and forth. They brought the barge in, sunk it on the ground, and then it was our job to build up the ramp so they could roll these. I had I don't know, 10 or 12 laborers. I had a roller, or a couple rollers, a couple of blade operators, and we built the ramps up to the ship so they could just bring them off. And yeah, that was a pretty cool job. But I was a mechanic foreman on a dirt job they had going at the same time, so I just slept in my pickup, and they had spike rooms out there. Yeah, it was 24 hours a day for 3 months, or excuse me, 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Looking back at that now, you see what Prudhoe Bay's become. You look at these different places. Does that give you some kind of appreciation that you were there kind of at the start of some of that? That
we built
you built the footprint for what they're doing
now. We built
now.
the bridge in the first road into the Caperic.
Into the Caperic.
Yeah, one of the hugest oil fields in North America. At the time it was, but now North Star and Endicott and all these other ones are out producing it. But that we had to go across in an R35 to cross the river. We'd all jump had ladders and get in the back of an R35 because there was no bridge. Mm-hmm. And we, once it froze up, I remember Jerry Fredrickson and Ed Irwin. Ed Irwin was our superintendent, and Jerry, we're testing, Ed auger, we're testing out the ice, and Ed went and bloosh, sunk the pickup.
Too far.
Yeah, no, it was, AIC was just getting started. John Ellsworth was our mechanic foreman.
Okay.
Yeah.
But does that,
yeah, you go up there today, and
when was the last time you were up at Prudhoe?
I've been back up on short terms. I went up and did a batch plant. John wanted all new admix pumps and rebuild this batch plant, and I think that was in 91 or 92, I think. But that was the last time. Yeah. Pretty much. I didn't, I went to work for Kiewit in 97 here.
Yeah, on the highway again. The last section on the highway.
Stayed with them till I retired.
So before we get to the Kiewit, in the years that you were teaching, did you enjoy teaching?
Yes, I did. I really enjoyed it. And I was the basketball or JV basketball coach, and I really enjoyed all of that, but the class that they had, I didn't really like it. I'd go, God, we're not teaching these kids, how, I said, a lot of kids. So I did a survey, and there was 97 kids that went into fishing and 3 that went into mechanics. So I made a presentation to the board and said, we need to steer this program more towards fishing. I said, we need to have fiberglass work, we need to have net mending and, marine electronics and, diesel, maybe some small diesel projects, because I already had a diesel engine in there that I got from Bill Thomas, came out of the Bantry. Yeah. Anyway, I had it in the school shop, and I go, and Mr. Henderson was on there, and I think Jerry Clifton, and some people, showed some support, but when it got down to voting, they said, no, I'm sorry, Mr. DeWitt, it's going to cost too much. And I go, well, it's not going to cost you anything. I said, everything we have here, I said, we have piles and piles of net. I said, we have, fiberglass stuff. I said, it's not any more expensive than wood.
Yeah.
you know, and I said, you know, it would be just just do some simple layups and, so you know how to mix it and how to deal with the temperatures when it's hot and how to deal with the temperatures when it's cold and when you can't do it and when you can do it, but they didn't see that. And so I went up to Prudhoe that year, and I was the master mechanic on a field shop they had up there. I had 16 mechanics working for me in the shop, and then 7 or 8 in the field. We had 150 haul units working. I mean, 10, 11 loaders in the pit. And,
gee whiz.
yeah.
That's a lot of iron to keep
It was overwhelming, and I did a pretty good job, and they said, okay, yeah, you're doing good. So, and I was really enjoying myself, and I called my wife up and I said, call Gary and tell him I'm not coming back.
Yeah, because I think your last year teaching was my freshman year.
Yeah.
Because I remember I took the second half of the year, I took Introduction to Welding with you. Mm-hmm. That's the only time I've ever welded.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything with it since. There's a couple times my dad said, well, he goes, we should buy that welder. I was like, what for? He says, well, didn't you take welding with Charlie? I was like, yeah. He said, so you know how to do it? I was like, Dad, that was like 20-something years ago.
And I was just a kid, I just welded pads on a...
I said, I don't know if I still got it. He goes,
Yeah.
oh, you'll figure it out. I was like, no, I don't think we need a welder. If I need something welded, I'll take it to Charlie.
No, I did that job, and then they said, hey, we want you to come up and run the block plant. I go, what's the block plant? And they go, well, we're making 3 foot by 3 foot, 9-inch thick concrete blocks for slope protection. And I go, what happened to the guys you had? And he said, they never made production. So I go, well, okay. So I go up there and pretty much had the same crew. I had Larry Jurgelite and Don Johnson.
Okay.
Yep. They were my night shift guys. They took care of all the materials. I had 7 guys. Chauncey was working in the plant for a while, and he was the flipper guy. Gave him a railroad hat, and he drove this. It was on a railroad track, and it was a flipper machine. You went off, you got these blocks off of these tables. They were 4x8 tables, and they set. Then after they dried, you had to bring them over, and then you turned them over, and you sealed the other side. Well, we did. It was a really, really good job, because they said, well, if you get over 250 blocks, you get an hour of overtime.
250 in how long a time period?
In a 10-hour period.
Wait, you're making 250 of these blocks in 10 hours?
Yeah. That's not it, Doug. They said if you made 250. We had days where we almost got 500. We averaged about 430 blocks a day.
400. How many guys were working on this again?
There was 7 guys running the plant, and then
So
Don Johnson.
they're just constantly feeding that mix out of there,
Yep.
then, aren't they?
Yep.
That's got to be a big plant that you've got all that.
It was
laid
a
out.
little pancake mixer. It did 1 yard at a time.
Really?
And it was the plant that we bought, or they got, was out of Wisconsin, the Weiser plant. And it was a dry casting plant. So you had these forms that came down and they folded up underneath to make the bevels, and then the top press plate made the bevels on the top, and then it lifted the form off, and then you had these tables with 2 blocks on it, and the forklift came and moved, and you had the finishers that, if there was any screw ups, they moved the mud around and fixed them up, and put them on these tables. But we had this shop, Doug, that was, I don't know, 700-800 feet by 150 feet. One of them sprung structure buildings.
Yeah.
We had everything in there because we had to thaw all the gravel, because that was Johnson's and Jurgelite's job, was to take.
So you have to thaw the gravel in order.
We
to
had
put it
to
in
thaw
the
put enough gravel in there for the whole day's production.
Yeah.
And
so the night crew would
it'd be about 110 in that place, because as soon as we'd get done, I'd crank the temperature up, and Johnson and they did all the maintenance on the plant.
Yeah.
And Larry, they would haul all the gravel in, you know. Yeah, so they were pretty busy. They'd have to rip it outside because it was in a stockpile. And they'd have to rip it loose and then bring a loader and haul it inside. And we had the thawed section and the unthawed section, you know, because we had to have enough to start with. And yeah.
So they were hoping you'd get 250.
Yeah.
The previous crew couldn't get that, and so you guys ended up doing 430, averaging around 430.
We got an extra hour overtime for every 100 blocks over 250.
So you guys are.
We worked a 10-hour shift.
A couple hours overtime, pretty much on a.
Yeah, every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
The crew must have loved that.
The crew, they were a wonderful crew. I mean, Pat Osseth from Washington, and geez, I just.
So how long do you guys keep that up for?
We did it until I left in June, I think. But we had done the big. There was 36,000 of the 9 foot by 9 foot, and we had to take.
Of them.
We could leave them inside. You know, you only had so much room. We had these tables, and there was 2 rows of tables on the right side of it, you know, because they had to stay inside one day, but after the 24 hours, we could put them outside, and we had Alaska Tent and Tarp build these sacks that were them insulated bubble stuff.
Okay.
We'd put that over the top of them, and then we had to have 3 heat probes in them, and they could not get over or under freezing. As long as for 7 days.
For 7 days, yeah.
Yeah, and then after 7 days, you had to go pull all the sacks off and start over again.
36,000.
That was only the one form, but there was 203 forms, different shapes.
And where were all these going? These were bank stabilization?
They were going to the North Star Island for slope stabilization. You can't find any riprap in Prudhoe, you know.
Yeah, you got to make it all.
It comes, you know, the nearest riprap is mile 117 or pit 117, you know, probably 200 miles from Prudhoe.
Yeah, so you're making all this stuff for.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
And you know they had these Manitowocks.
That's just massive.
Yeah. Well, they should stick them together. They put 15 of these blocks together, and then they be whatever it took to get down to the toe of the, the ocean floor.
Yep.
They had these 4,100 Manitowocks, and they'd put them over, and then they had to lay them up the beach, and then they had to have somebody go down there and shackle them together.
So they had divers under there shackling everything together.
Yep.
Holy cow!
They're still there.
That's just a square footage of. That's just an amazing.
We'd get 2 trucks a day of the
mix.
tankers of just dry concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So with all of that going on and working all these big projects, what made you decide to get into commercial fishing?
Well, I started when I was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Tim Twilliger and I had a set net site at the Katsahine Flats.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys go over there, camp out, and catch fish?
Yeah, we'd go over there and camp out for the opening, and we had a boat that Tim Twilliger
at 12.
Huh?
At 12.
Yeah, 13.
12, 13.
Yeah, but he had a 16-foot boat that Tim Dad built under the church over there.
Okay.
Down in the basement. And that was our boat, and we had a 6 horsepower Johnson.
6 horsepower Johnson going over to Katsahine.
And we went all the way to the Katsahine, like 2-hour trip, They say, well, your boat's slow, they talk about the Tiffany Lee. It's a slow boat. I go, you should have been on that boat.
It's really fast.
It's loaded. It's got nets in it, and, yeah.
So how many fish were you guys catching?
Sometimes it would be really good. You know how that corner is. And a lot of times it'd be a whole shitload of humpies. Lots of humpies, and
I know about catching humpies with you.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, we'd go over there, and I mean, God, that one year we'd had this horrible storm. It just nasty. And I remember Tim said, just take it out and we'll tie it to the buoy. So I was on it, underneath the front, with a tarp over me, and, Anyway, the next morning I got up and I said, no.
Nope.
It was high tide, so I went way down, and behind where we had our camp, there was a little, like a riverbed, and was out of the wind.
Uh-huh.
So I put it in there, and I said, I ain't going out there anymore. But I remember Stan Lang come in on the Pacific Queen.
Yeah.
And he goes on the bullhorn, "You guys okay?" And we go, "Yeah." We waved to him. He goes, "Don't worry about your fish. They'll be fine." Off he went, God, that was a nasty storm.
Yeah.
But no, it was a lot of fun, I remember Tim telling me, he reached over and slapped my hand, and I go, "What the hell did you do that for?" And he goes, "You're playing with my hair." And I go, "I am not." And he looks around, there's a mouse. Yeah, it was quite a adventure for a couple of kids, I think Tim was 15 or 16.
So how many years did you do that? Was it just the one summer?
Just that one summer, Tim, or Doug, and because the next year is when they eliminated the set nets. Tim was going off to school or whatever, and I bought the boat and all the nets and everything else, and the year before, and I'm gonna go do it, and it, the next year they said, well, you can't subnet, or you can't set net anymore.
Yeah.
You have to drift net. So my dad said, "You ain't doing that." I go, "I got the boat." I went to work for Frank Wallace.
So how did you do any other commercial fishing until you got the sitz mark? Then you ever were a deckhand or anything?
Oh, I was a deckhand for Arnold Bennett.
Really?
Yeah, I halibut fished with him a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we took all of our fish to Skagway, every one we ever caught, and
Yep.
I mean, it sold like hotcakes.
Just sell them off the dock?
Yeah, most of the time it was the restaurants that bought them all.
Okay.
What the heck was that? What was that guy's name? He was owned one restaurant. He was a basketball guy, Carlos, or I don't remember his name, but they bought most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one trip, the one year we had 7,000-8,000 pounds we sold over there. But yeah, and we used the same octopus for the 7 days. Arnie, he said that octopus is the best bait. He was a true believer. I mean, he had it flown into Haines.
Really?
Yeah, I think he got like 10 cases of octopus.
Well, it seems the few times I've been halibut fishing, it stays on the hook really well.
Well, that's what I was telling you.
Yeah.
I know that we had one, because Arnie had floats on his, he had these floats, and I don't know, I've never seen them since or before, but they were supposed to float the bait off the bottom, so the sand fleas and stuff, but I can't believe that, because the chunk of octopus that we had on there was, that big.
Big chunk of meat.
And I remember because there was an orange float, and it had that same chunk of octopus on it for the 7 days that we fished. It was crazy. We never went past Eldred Rock. And this was in April.
Wow.
Yeah. Jeff David was out fishing at the same time. But, yeah.
So what year did you when did you buy the sitz mark?
In 85.
85.
Yep.
Okay. And then you fished that for 3 years?
2 years.
2 years?
Yep.
87 you got the Tiffany Lee?
I didn't get the Tiffany Lee because I went to Arizona.
Okay, that's right.
I went to work.
Yep.
I was working for AIC, and they had that.
What project were we working on down there?
Central Arizona project, 33 miles of the big ditch. Never done any of that before. Here we are, Alaska company that's used to hauling dirt, and you say, "Oh yeah, you got to pave this ditch," and okay, we were lucky that there was a lot of paving equipment laying around. Because Ball and Brosmer were the people that were doing it all, and they go, "How the hell can you guys get this job?" And I go, "I don't know. I didn't bid it.
I didn't bid it. I'm just down
I said,
here
the engineers did. I'm just down here to do it." And they go, "Well, we got some equipment. You guys can rent it from us, Yeah, so it's what we did. We rented equipment, paving equipment and truck unloaders and all that stuff. I had 7 Holland loaders from Montana that put the first D11 one of them hauling loaders. It could load 238,000 pounds in 35 seconds.
Dang.
Yeah, it was an amazing piece. You know,
Yeah.
it was the seventh. I bought the seventh D11 off the line.
Really?
I bought it from the the Phoenix proving grounds
Yeah.
before they moved it to Tucson.
Yeah.
That was a pretty interesting task.
Yeah.
I had a welder named Bob Chapman that was an artist. He was, he came from Oregon, Brookings, Oregon, and he was probably the finest welder that I had ever seen. He was an artist. I mean, him and his brother built boats in Brookings,
Okay.
like 58-foot and bigger seine boats.
So how did a guy building boats in Brookings, Oregon, get down to Arizona?
He didn't. He came to Prudhoe because back in the days, all them guys that worked in the pipeline, when it first started, they didn't get enough hours to get vested in the 302.
Okay.
So Bob was up there working, and
they would come back and get their hours.
They had a shortage, and because I don't know how many. We must have had 300 or 400 people working on that project we were on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even more than that. I don't know for sure the total number, but they were short of mechanics, because the Teamsters that year didn't sign with the rest of the Alaska unions. So we didn't have any Teamsters. So we had operators in every one of them trucks. That was even worse, But Bob came up there, and I had a couple of guys from Bob Jecky from Cedar Woolley and his son. They all showed up there when I got in there, and God, they were great people. They were all just trying to get enough hours to get their retirement. Yeah. Anyway, but Bob, when I found Bob, I kept Bob busy all the time that I could. He came and worked in the shop in Prudhoe, and then when they transferred me down to Arizona, I took Bob. Was one of the first guys that I took. We had to rebuild all them trucks. They had been on that big project, and they were just beat. And so they sent me down with the intention of rebuilding these 26 trucks. Plus we had a big fire. We had 3 trucks that were completely burned to nothing. But weird, the fire. It was such an updraft, Douglas, that the tires were burned from above 6 feet. There was not a burn below it, and the paint and all that stuff. Yeah.
What started the fire? What caused the fire?
It was a door opener. The ice had built up underneath the door, so the door came down, and it kept trying to shut.
Okay.
And it caught it on fire, and they had, all them buildings up there were foamed, and most of them had retardant sprayed over them, but I don't know if the retardant had failed or in that one area or whatever, but the motors were right next to the ceiling and caught that ceiling on fire. I remember we were eating dinner, and somebody came and said, "The shop's on fire." So we ran over there, and I mean the whole, I looked in the door, and the whole half the one end was completely engulfed in flames, and they go, "What do we do?" I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "I used to belong to the Haines Volunteer Fire Department, and they always told you not to introduce any air. It'll, self-regulate." Well, we didn't tear the doors open or anything like that. We probably should have, to get the equipment that was in there. We had there was a brand new 245 backhoe, and 3 of these B70s were in there, and just I got a couple of dozers out. There was the main room and in the middle, and then there was a warehouse that went this way, and our welding bay was next, and then the wash bay, and then the tire room. I got, I don't know, 2 dozers out, I think, is all I got out. But I went to get an air pack, because I had been trained, in the air packs with the Haines Volunteer Fire Department. I was going to get an air pack. Well, they brought me an air pack, but there was no oxygen in it.
They don't work nearly as well without oxygen, do they?
No, I go turn it on, and I go, "This ain't going to work."
That's not going to be much help.
No. So, yeah, it was pretty devastating for our company because we had we had a warm storage for the oil, Doug. There was 40,000 gallons of Dello 1540 and 10,000 gallons of hydraulic oil and 10,000 gallons of transmission oil and all this stuff, and that stuff burned for a week. It was that it had a vent line coming off the tank. It went out. It
just
shot out of there like
for a week.
Yeah, it looked like one of the flares from around Prudhoe Bay, from a well.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it was, and I mean, it took all of our inventory. We had $4 or $5 million worth of parts and inventory. It was really devastating because we had a big project coming up
that's
in
a
winter.
big hit.
Yeah, and then all the mechanics' tools. I had luckily taken my tools out 2 or 3 days before and moved it into the block plant, so mine didn't get burned. But all the other guys, they all got $50,000 checks for tools.
Nice. Can't imagine that kind of loss of equipment and everything in just one.
Yeah, the worst thing was that brand new 245. That was, oh my God, we got a new one. 'Cause we've been working on them old ones. We had that, every time you look at it, it'd spring a leak or whatever,
Like finally a new one.
Yeah, we had, up in Prudhoe, they're really particular about oil leaks.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to, you stop your equipment, you got to put these pads.
Mm-hmm.
They've got these pads that go, not pads, they're actually
containment
plastic
things, right?
containments that got oil absorbent pads in them.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to put them underneath, but some of them old hose, you'd have to have them all over, Yeah. But really, it was a lot of fun.
So when you had the SITS mark before going to Arizona, that was something you enjoyed, and so you decided to buy the Tiffany, the Tiffany
the reason why I had the SITS mark was, again, I worked so many hours at Prudhoe Bay that I was looking for some way that I could spend, some time at home. And I thought, well, fishing would be it, and I bought the SITS mark, and it served me for a couple of years, but then, as you remember, it tipped over. Yeah.
Yep.
It came off the hitch, and
Mm-hmm.
it slipped backwards and came off my white truck and ran down the hill and flipped over. Well, that's the year that I went, I was always done by the 1st of September. That was always my rule. I would come and start, and I'd fish the 15th of June till the 1st of September, and that's what the guys in Prudhoe knew I was going to do, so they didn't have a problem. And it was, I was pulling out to go to work, in Prudhoe, and flipped over. And so I got down to Arizona, and I was getting paid very handsomely. And I said, I'd like to get a new boat. And Tony goes, well, why don't you? And I said, oh, I don't have a whole lot of money. I said, but so I was looking at boats, and Bill Thomas was having one built, and I think I even went by there on my way to Arizona to look,
Uh-huh.
And I go, oh, okay, yeah. So I bought the hull and cabin. It was $18,000 is what I paid for it. So I gave Jim the money, and I said, I want a hull and cabin. And I said, Jim, I don't know, how much money I'm going to have to put into this. And I said, if it's a problem, it's no big deal. And he goes, no. He said, we'll just build you a hull and cabin and set it outside, and if you get any extra money, send it our way. Well, while I was down there, I built the motor for it.
Okay.
I built a Detroit diesel, and I shipped it up to Seattle, and they put that motor in, and transmission, and I'd come up with some money, and I'd say, okay, you can do the fish holes, and they'd pull the boat in on the trailer, and do the fish holes, or put the fuel tanks in, all the stuff that I couldn't do, and then they had the engine in it, and none of the floors were in it. And when I went down in January of 1988, and Dean Walsh him and I had been talking, and he was working for Nordic Tug.
Okay.
In Seattle, anyway, he says, well, I'm not working much. They don't have much going on. He said, if you want, I can go start working on your boat. And I go, okay, yeah, okay, Dean. So he started just after Christmas, I guess, and I showed up after the New Year's, and we slapped that whole inside of that boat. Jim Lindell let us use his shop, and I put the exhaust and everything else, and had it pretty well ready to go. I didn't have the hydraulics and stuff all in it yet, but I had it shipped up here on AML.
Yeah.
And went out there, and I put it in the water and towed it to the harbor and finished it out. Put the hydraulics and all that stuff in it. And yeah, it was she's still a great boat.
I was gonna say that's 40 years, almost 40 years now.
1988.
Still running.
Well, it was its first year of fishing.
Yeah. Still going strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good investment.
Yeah.
See? You should listen to Tony more often when she tells you to go ahead and do something.
Yeah. I have been. Yeah. No, it's been an interesting life. My wife has always thought that I enjoyed my work too much. And I always tell, you have to love your work to be, to make your life any kind of anything, If you don't love your work, if you're doing a job that you don't like, you're going to be miserable all your life. And I've very seldom been miserable. I'm getting miserable now that I'm getting so old, feeble,
I hardly think you're feeble, Charlie. I think that's
well,
one of the least likely words somebody would use for Charlie DeWitt.
Yeah, well, I can feel it, Doug. It's coming.
It's coming. So that had to be, you've mentioned it a couple times, just that you wanted to get back for your family. That had to be really hard, the amount of time you were spending out of time, and you're leaving Tony to raise 2 kids and do all that work here.
You have to admit that she might be Finnish, but they must have made saints in Finland too.
Yeah.
Because you look at all the people that I had a friend that he sent every check that he made up on the North Slope. He was making way bigger money than I was. He was on a different job, and they had no problem with the hours that he put in, and bought his wife a new Corvette and a new house, and he goes down there. He would spend 6 months before going home.
Holy cow.
Anyway, he went home, but he didn't have a home. The Corvette was gone. The locks were changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, she is a saint.
Yeah.
Because, I'm sure she probably wasn't as happy as I was, because, having to deal with all this snow and, raising 2 kids and changing poopy diapers, and, she was a good mother. There's no doubt about it. She is a saint. Well, and that's why I guess we've been married for 50 some odd years.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't hear that very often.
No. Yeah, so that's, and that talking about Tony, she comes from a pretty cool family too. I mean, I knew Dorothy when I was younger, but she passed away when I was still pretty young. But the time with Clifford stopping by the store pretty much every day after he retired, getting to know Clifford, he was one of the all-time greats for me.
Yes, he was.
I absolutely loved
Clifford. I tell you what, I could not ask for a finer father-in-law.
Well, even mother-in-law, Dorothy
loved me too.
She was amazing.
Yes.
She wasn't with us long enough.
No.
But she was an amazing woman. And then Clifford was...
there's so many things around this town that they don't remember that Dorothy did, like the third-class borough. Who wrote it? Dorothy Fossman.
Dorothy Fossman.
Who got the money, or, Bill Ray was the guy that got the money, but was coerced by Dorothy to get the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
That's who built. I remember working up there building corrals, and, I think, did your dad build that?
I remember him building Harriet Hall, and then also the barn.
Yeah.
I don't know who was working with him. I don't know if that was the North Star Construction, but I distinctly going over there watching him with the construction, and I remember a couple nights being over there after work here and he had that old Busy Bee, some kind of paint spray or something.
Oh,
And
Binks.
The
Binks, no, yeah.
And he was just
Spraying away,
and then you'd hear this weird sound, and then he'd be cursing, and then he was all mad about something. I was young enough; I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, it was a Binks.
I was playing in the dirt and everything
Yeah.
like that, and then he'd get it figured out, and he'd go back to spraying, and then something would go wrong again. But yeah, no, that was my first memories at the fairgrounds, is being out there watching a little bit of the construction
that they
and then
built
the painting.
it. I don't, because I was working with Bud Hooker and Wayne Hooker.
Yep.
And, Dorothy and Tony, and we were building the corral. We dug the poles and put that first corral in there, and then the barns and stuff like that. Yeah. That's what I remember. I was probably home for 2 weeks or something, and she coerced me into doing that, or I don't even think we had kids then,
Yeah.
That was that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she was, with Little League and everything. Dorothy was a big sponsor of the Little League and organizing that back in the day. And
Well, Tony was too. I
Tony
think
was
she
too,
had it
and
too
she-
because, they didn't have it, and she goes to Terry Seeley or Terry Frisky and says, hey, these kids need to play, they were playing softball and, and yeah, they had pretty good talent, Andrew and Stewart and, the Henry, Grand Slam Henry.
Yep.
He hit a Grand Slam in one of their games to beat Wrangell,
Yep.
Yeah, it was, And, and then Terry had to leave with Andrew because Andrew, his lymph nodes were screwing up in his legs, and he had to leave. So there's Tony, but she loves it, and all. She still has her ball with all of her kids signed.
With all the kids' signatures on it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Clifford, I just, the different stories with Clifford over the years was.
I've learned so many war stories about Clifford and different boxing stories, when he was a professional boxer, and it was pretty crazy.
Like 6, 7 years old, he'd be in there telling me, working on my jab and everything. No, got to get your hand up a little bit more. You got to get your hip into it, and the one I remember the most is, I forget what because we'd have a TV in the store all the time.
Oh yeah.
And we didn't have cable,
Price
but we
is
had
Right.
the and Price is Right.
Yeah.
And he would come in
Because
and
he watched it earlier in the morning.
He'd watched it earlier, and he was
you guys
making
were
bets.
on RatNet or whatever.
Yeah, we're on RatNet, and he's coming in, and he's bet, and he was like within $1 or whatever. I think he just put it off a little bit on like the Showcase Showdown. We're like,
You and Dennis were going.
how the hell is he doing this? And then
Yeah.
I think it was about a week or so before he finally fessed up that that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're like, man.
I'm sure he was just chomping at the bit too,
It was Price is Right, and then Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
Both of those, and we're like, man, how in the heck is he doing this? He's
a genius.
He's a freaking genius on this. But,
God.
Yeah. Then he finally fessed up with that smile of his. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. He was. He lived with us for 13 years at our house, and it was a pleasure. I tell you what. I mean, you'd always come up with something that.
Oh, he had and it was. I don't remember him ever complaining.
No.
He always had he might have complained
Positive
somewhere,
attitude.
just positive no matter what was going on.
No, the only time he wasn't positive is when Tony would say, "Clifford, you need a shower." It's all right. I don't need a shower. I ain't done nothing to stink. And that was, in his latter years, it was, he was a great guy.
When I remember going back after my dad had his accident, he had the office in the back, and he was helping me clean some stuff up. And in his one desk drawer, he had this small jar of pennies. I was like, Dad, what's with the pennies? And he just got this big smile, and he's like, that's my winnings with Clifford. Because they would, when it was football games and stuff, they'd always bet big ones. It was 5 big ones or whatever. It was 5 pennies.
Yeah.
And so he was ahead that many pennies on Clifford, and that was big for him that he was winning more than he lost.
Some of them might be some wheat pennies that are good.
I think we got anything that were wheat pennies. I think we've already high graded those things.
Yeah.
But no, those were all gone. So another thing I want to mention with you is I don't know if you remember this, but you were along on the trip where I lost any desire to go duck hunting ever again. Do you remember that? Beginning of my freshman year of high school, my dad's like, "Hey, you're skipping cross country. Charlie and I are going to go, and you are going to go duck hunting." And we took your boat. We went down below Wells, couldn't find anything. We went up.
We went to Flossman Flats is where there'd been a bunch of geese down
There's
in
that bunch of geese right along the back with Stump Lake there, right along the backside there. And you're like, oh, I know a place. And so we come in the backside, we hike through the woods, and then we're going to hike out through the marsh to get to these geese.
And they weren't there.
Well, not only that, but we're getting a little ways out there, and I was like, Dad, the water's about to the top of my hip boots. Just a little bit longer. Don't worry about it. Pretty soon my boots are full of water. This is in September. It was cold water. I remember by the time we got out there, I was shorter than I am now, but it was like chest high, and I got the shotgun over my head like this.
I didn't remember that, Doug.
And I was like, I'm freezing my ass off. And it's just a little bit. We get out there, and
no geese.
They're all gone.
Well,
and then the road trip back on the back, because it started getting dark, and we're coming down, and then boom, we hit a sandbar. We hit like 3 sandbars on the way back.
I wasn't very good at running rivers then.
Well, it was dark too.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't see anything. I think my dad had a flashlight. He was trying to shine ahead of you to see where the river was. By the time we got back to truck, I was so freaking cold. I was like, this duck hunting sucks.
Well, I took my wife in there. I bought the gun for her 16th birthday from your dad.
Yeah.
$137. It's a Remington 870 lightweight. I go, this is the perfect gun for her. So I said, okay, I'm taking you goose hunting. I said, we're going to Fossman Flats and going in the back. So we go up in there because we used to hike all the way from the Chilkat Lake Road.
Okay.
You used to go down along the edge, and you'd end up and you'd have to hike across through the trail. Snuffy and I had a trail in there. You cross the river, and we got over there, and we're going over there. You can just hear them talking, honk, honk, honk. And I go, okay. I said, on 3. 1, 2, 3. And we stand up, and I go, bam, bam, bam. Shoot 3 geese. And Tony's standing there like this. And I go, what's wrong? And she goes, they mate for life. So that was pretty much the end of Tony's duck hunting.
No more.
Her 870, her 870 lightweight turned into a trap gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that would make sense. And that's the other thing with Clifford. Speaking of trap shooting, the way he told the stories, he went out one time trap shooting. He shot the first clay bird, and he stopped.
Here's the way it went.
Okay, because he said, 100%. He said, I can never beat that.
He shot 10 shots.
Yeah.
And he bammoed 9 of them, and he missed the 10th one. And he goes, that's it, I'm done. I'm a 90% trap shooter. Yeah, I was down on the Beach Road down there.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a little hand thrower. And it was a lot of fun then. Yeah.
So looking back on it, anything you would have done different?
No.
Any trips you would have taken? Anything you would have?
I'd like to have gone sheep hunting, but I think my sheep hunting days are over. I mean, I killed, I don't know how many goats I killed, a lot, Douglas. And I mean, I really enjoyed the mountain hunting, I hunted most of the time with Chauncey Craig, and him and I had about the same speed. He was faster going up, but I was faster coming down, so it averaged out. We shot a lot of goat, and our favorite spot was Chilkoot. I mean, we've shot deer and everything, all over Alaska. Yeah. But that goat hunting was my favorite, I mean, you get up there and try to figure out where they were going to be. And I remember being up there in snow this deep one November. The last day used to be November 30th or 31st or whatever the last day was. And we're up there, and I mean, we could see these goats, I mean, God, they were, we got up there and we shot a couple, and God, Doug. We drug them all the way down, you know, and it was perfect weather, you know. They didn't, you know, it was in between, you know, 35 and 30, you know. It was, we hung them and hung them and hung them, and we took and cut them, and, you know, Chauncey goes, hey, I'm going to cut some back straps out. And he goes, you going to come over? And I go, yeah. So he cuts these back straps out, you know, look beautiful, you know, butterflies them and sticks them in the pot. And as soon as you stuck them in the frying pan, and as soon as you stuck them in the frying pan, you go, oh my God. So we took and, you know, we'll let them hang some longer, you know, and maybe that'll get rid of it. Well, that didn't fix it. So we go, well, we're going to grind it into sausage. So we ground it all into sausage and put just tons and tons of spices. I mean, the meat didn't taste bad, but just that smell.
Oh, the smell of it.
Yeah,
Nice.
just, you know, both of them were Billies too, you know, and yeah. But we had ground them into sausage, and that's the way we ate them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what is it about the outdoors? 'Cause you love to hunt, you love to be out fishing. What is it about the outdoors that is it just that peaceful feeling of just being out there away from people?
No, that
or
you're smarter than the animals.
You're smarter than the animals?
Yeah, and that you probably think about it, you know, you might only see the stupid ones, because I think there's a lot of them that get, you know, because I can't figure out, Doug, you know, we've been bear baiting, and, you know, I enjoy it just watching the animals, you know, what they do, you know. I don't have to kill another bear. I've killed 2 bears in my life, you know. I never really saw any great, you know, I didn't need the hide, you know, I didn't need the meat, you know.
Yep.
I just, you know, but I really enjoy just watching them, what they do, you know, when they're in there, and, you know, what sets them off, you know, when, you know, they know the big boy's coming, you know, they all, you know what I mean, you've done it
You
yourself.
can see that nervousness
you know,
on
they
them.
all, you know, they want to get that last bite, you know, they really get excited, you know, and, you know, they.
How much more food can I get before
you
he's
know,
kicking me out of here?
snapping around, yeah. And, you know, because then something will happen to the big boy, and he'll back off, you know, or do whatever, and they'll go back in there, and you can just see him just like trying to gorge themselves. Yeah, it's you know, and I mean, I enjoy all, you know, aspects of watching wildlife. You know, I mean, I don't have to kill anything, Doug. I mean, I do like moose. You know, it's probably you know, we survived off of it for 50 years. You know, I remember the first moose I shot when Tony was with us. We shot in the back in the corner, and we stayed in your dad's camp. We shot it over
Murphy Flats?
on Murphy Flats,
Yeah.
and she was with us, and my dad and I, she was with us, but she wasn't in the field with us.
Okay.
Because I had shot a moose, you know, out of the eagle tree over there. So, except it was too windy to shoot it out of the eagle tree, so I got down and shot it, you know, because the eagle tree was moving pretty good. Anyway, so I'm going back, and I told her, I said, you know, if it gets dark, you know, fire a shot every 5 minutes or something, because, you know, I said, you know, because we shot it just right at dark, and, you know, we had to build a little island out there where it was, because my dad and I couldn't move it. So we, you know, got a bunch of sticks and rolled it around to get it out so we could gut it and dry it out, you know, and it was dark, and we were heading, and Tony said, I said, well, I told Tony to shoot a shot every, you know, 10 minutes or whatever, just so we could. So the first thing she does, you know, it gets dark, she goes outside and shoots the gun up in the air and shoots the stick off, and it crashes to the ground, and it scared the heck out of her. Yeah. She didn't appreciate that, you know, us coming in late. She still doesn't appreciate us coming in late. Oh yeah, she'll call the police department or whatever if we're, you know, an hour late or whatever. You know, she takes good care of us. But yeah, she's a wonderful woman.
So what was it like for you? Stuart was telling us about when he got encephalitis when he was a kid.
Well,
What was that like for you as a dad, having to medevac your kid to Seattle and
It was
Just
you
not
don't
knowing for a
know
while.
anything, Doug.
That was the thing he was saying. Nobody knew really what was going on,
You know,
and that had to be scary as all get out.
Stuart and I, he was fishing with me before he, 2 days before that.
Yep.
And we were down on Sullivan. And lo and behold, there's a buck on the beach, bedded down. So I pulled the Tiffany Lee in and, probably was illegal, but might not have been then. But I shoot this buck and I said, no, Stuart, you got to go get him. So he jumps off the bow of the boat, and takes a rope with him. And, it was sandy beach, so I just had the nose and had the boat in gear, just sitting there, idling. And so he gets the rope and pulls it in, and then, he just didn't seem like something was wrong, and, and it just seemed like it got worse. And, I had to go fishing and, on Sunday, and it just, he didn't, he just was lethargic, and we thought, oh, it's just something going on, and I didn't think anything of it. And I get out fishing, and I think the harbor master called me, because Tony didn't have a VHF at home, and harbor master got a hold of me, and I had Bob Smith with me, and we were going fishing, and geez, I came back in, and they said, yeah, there's something, he was having grand mal seizures, and I go, oh my God, what's going to happen to my poor son? Is he going to die or what? It was really stressful, and I'm very thankful that it worked out. But I couldn't imagine, losing your son at 10 years old, 11 years old, it'd be hard.
I was thinking when he was talking about that, I was thinking of you and Tony, of just the not knowing at the beginning for a few days there what was causing this.
Well, see, I either was doing something, or when he was pitching the ball, because Tony or Stuart mentioned about hitting, beaning the kids, and laughing, and Tony was saying, geez, I'd not like Stuart, and because Stuart's a pretty caring kid, or a person, I should say.
Yes.
He cares about a lot of people and a lot of things, and we don't think about it, but he does.
Yeah.
And he's always been well liked because he doesn't have any opinions on whether you're good, bad, or whatever. Everybody's just a person.
Yeah.
But no, it was really scary because I didn't get to ride in the Medevac plane, and I probably would have killed the pilot or whoever the Medevac nurse was, because they ran out of oxygen, and had to bag him all the way, and he was so doped up, that he couldn't breathe, and we're just so fortunate.
So you flew down?
I flew on Alaska Airlines, and I landed almost the same time they did. In fact, I got in just right behind the ambulance that picked him up at the airport.
Okay.
I got to Children's Hospital.
Yep.
Yep. That was scary.
So what's in the future? Right now you're splitting your time between Arizona and Haines. You go down to Arizona and go shooting in the desert.
I don't shoot in the desert. I shoot at the range, Doug.
At the
Come
range?
on. I give up on the desert. In fact, I brought my side-by-side home with me because, that's what I used to do, was go out there. But it got so crazy in the desert with all the people shooting, you feared for your life.
There's that many people heading out there.
Oh my God! You'll go in spots. There'll be piles that they're messy. They don't. I take a nice target stand out on the back of my four-wheeler, set it up. Because I was when I first started going out in the desert down there. John Shaw was talking to me about, they have a shoot down there where they shoot at these silhouettes, turkey silhouettes at 200 yards, and I go, oh, I think I could hit one of them. So I bought an Anschutz on. They have a white thing called a white sheet. It's like a used section of town, and everybody puts it's free to put them in there. And I bought this Anschutz, and I go, oh, I think I could hit something at 200 yards. And, that's when you really learn about wind and 22 bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're doing that here, you know. We shoot 2 days a week here. We shoot on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
I thought it was Thursdays and Saturdays.
Or Thursdays and Saturdays. And we, it's a lot of fun. We have 6 or 7, 8 guys, you know, that shoot pretty regularly. And
So one of the things, when you were talking about people making a mess down in the desert, that's one of the things that really bothers me. A lot of places, Haines is no exception. The people that go out shooting that don't pick up after themselves, even at the range here, it's a shooting range, but pick up your brass and pick up your cartridges when you're done. Take your targets home with you. Don't be shooting garbage and everything and leaving it out there. I know it's in a lot of different segments of society where nobody cares, nobody wants to clean up after themselves, but like, come on, because I know Mike Benke, you, and Davey, and Ron, and there's a group of you guys that are out there cleaning the range all the time. I know Shane does a lot with the shotgun range and everything down there, but it's ridiculous.
yeah,
The
well,
number of people that go out there, and you're paying a membership to be a part of this, and you don't take care of it.
yep.
I
Because you know what, Doug, the biggest thing the biggest objection, you know, I don't mind the brass so much.
Yeah.
You know, the shotgun brass I mind, but if you notice there's a new sign up there, no shotguns on the 100-yard range.
we got a sheet up at the counter too
Yeah.
that we're letting people know when they sign up.
Yep. And, you know, the thing that I have the problems is, you know, they won't, you know, they want to shoot short range, you know,
Yeah.
they'll shoot. Why don't you just go to the pistol range?
Go to the
There's
pistol
4
range and shoot.
stands down there. You can shoot all you want, you know, at short range. You know, you don't have to bring, you know, there's rocks and propane tanks and just junk, you know, TVs and, you know, and then they never, you know, if you want to shoot a TV, go shoot one in your backyard.
Or if you're shooting a propane tank, when you put a hole in it, take it to the landfill.
Yep. Well, that's more than one hole.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'd take when we'd have empty refrigeration bottles. You know,
Yeah.
they either have to be certified or have to have a hole in them.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'll take those out to the pistol range and
Shoot a hole in them.
shoot a bunch of holes, like
Yeah.
you say, and throw them in the back of my truck. Then
Take them to the landfill.
Then I can take them to the landfill and
Yeah.
have them recycle them because
Yeah.
it's all material that they ship south or whatever with the metals.
Because it's good number 1 metal. It
Yeah.
should be good stuff.
Yep, but it needs to have a hole in it, and
Yeah.
it's like
Can't have any refrigerant.
it's one of the, and by the time I'm done with them, they can pretty much guarantee there's no refrigerant in them.
Yeah, there's
They're-
100
they're-
holes in it.
I make sure that the techs have them empty beforehand, but for them to, they have to put a tag on them and all that. I was like, don't worry about that. As long as you put it all in our system, I can make sure that they know that they're fully empty.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Just
They
take-
didn't vent into the environment.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
No,
guy with the CFC certificate supposed to
That's
put
what
the tag on it.
They,
Yeah.
I tell the guys that have that certificate when they're working on our system, any tanks that you're done with, you just make sure that they're 100% evacuated. You don't need to put a tag on it. I'll handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And the one guy asked me, he goes, what do you mean you can't put a tag on it? I said, no, but I can make sure that they know that it's fully evacuated. He's like, how do you do that? I said, 9mm. He's like, what? Said I take it out to the range and take my Glock 19 and put
Yeah.
a bunch of holes in them. Then I can take them to the landfill.
That was another thing. You talk about a Glock 19.
Yeah.
When Clifford would be in the hospital, he'd say, "Where's my Glock?"
Was he worried about the nurses
I
mugging
don't
him or
know.
something? Or?
He wanted that damn
He
Glock
wanted the
19.
Glock.
But then, so I think he got that from you or
Uh-huh.
Will.
Probably
Albertsburg.
Will. I think it was with Will Albertsburg.
When
Yeah.
he was working here.
Yep.
Anyway, my niece, Tina Turnbull,
Yep.
she comes up here and goes moose hunting with us, and she's telling us about how she's going to the range, and you know she's got this instructor, and she's really liking shooting. You know, she's thinking about getting a gun. I go, well, what kind of gun are you gonna get? She goes, I really like the Glocks. And I go, oh, so
Really?
yeah. And I go, well, I'm sure your grandfather would love you to have it.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I had some of the guns. Steve had some of the guns. And
Mhm.
Sydney can't have any. So I just give it to her, you know. And I go, here you go. And she goes, what do I have to do? I said, well, go down to Douglas's and buy a box. You know, it's got to be locked. You can put it in your suitcase. Your suitcase doesn't have to be locked, but it's better if it is. But as long as it's locked in the case. And they go, oh, okay. So anyway, she calls me up this last fall, you know, in October or November. And, you know, we're talking, and Cliff, our Bill says, come on up for Thanksgiving. And I go, oh, okay. We went up there for Thanksgiving, and we go have a big fancy, you know, 27-course Chinese dinner, you know. And Tina tells me, she's sitting next to me, and she goes, Uncle Charlie, she says, guess how much my Glock's worth? And I go, oh, $600, you know. And I go, she goes, no. She said, I took it to the range, and this guy goes, oh my God. She goes, what? She goes, that's a Glock Gen 1. There's only 50 of them in the United States. You know how much that gun's worth? I wouldn't shoot it. And she goes, no, how much is it worth? He goes, between $15,000 and $30,000. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And I go, God, and I gave that
I
away.
gave it.
But when I was down there.
Did she still shoot it?
When I went down there the last time, she said, we're going to the range. So we go to the range, and, you know, she goes bam, 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 and shoots the target, you know, the man silhouette targets. And I go, bam, 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 bam. I put 8 of them in the head. And she goes, wow. Because she had a 43 also, you know.
Okay.
You know, thinking that would be a better, you know, it's a concealed weapons. And, you know, she does dogs, that bomb sniffing dogs.
Seriously?
Seriously. She started out, Doug, she had a Malinois, and she trained it to do bed bugs.
Really?
Thinking that
going into hotels and stuff like
you know,
that?
and finding bed bugs. Well, she got involved in that, but then this.
I was gonna say, that's quite a leap between bed bugs and bombs.
Well, I know, but this guy that, you know, one of the dog handlers or whatever, that, you know, because you just because you don't, you know, you work for a company, you know, you got your dog trained, and they have to certify that the dogs. And anyway, one of the handlers said, well, why don't you come over here and work with us? You know, they can smell bombs. But she has a different, not her dog, but she has another trained dog that's trained to smell dogs or bombs.
Dang.
Wow.
I did not know she was.
But so she had to get a license to carry, you know, as a. So she's doing that now, but she's carrying the 43, I think.
That's one I would carry as well.
Yeah. No, I couldn't believe it when she told me it was $30,000, but. Then I look it up, and I go, holy crap, she's telling the truth.
Right, she's right.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I just don't know where Will would have got that from, because I don't know what it's, because they said that the people that got him were police officers or security. And I don't know what Will's background was, you know.
Yeah, he'd been in the Marines, but it'd been a while, and it could have just been something that he got off of somebody else.
Yeah.
You never know how some of those go. But yeah, that was one I'm quite. He didn't get it off of me. That was one he had to have gotten it off of Will. But,
yeah, because he was all proud of that.
Oh, and knowing the conversations between Clifford and Will.
Yeah.
If both of them were still here and Clifford was able to get over, that gun you sold me for $400 or whatever, it's worth $30,000. You know that would have gone on for months.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
That would have gone on for months with Clifford and Will.
Yeah, he was a wonderful man. I mean, God. I remember when we'd fish in the Derby, we would screw with him so much, you know, because we had this, when we first got the Bayliner that we sold to your dad.
Yeah.
I remember, you know, Clifford would fall asleep over in the corner, and he had that pole that was about 13 feet long. Anyway, I'd have to go around and get the gaff hook and pull the line in, you know, then I'd put a swivel on it, and then I'd go back around the front of the boat and let the line go underneath. And then I'd sit on the other side, you know, Tony'd be driving or whatever, and oh God! Oh. I remember one time we were trolling over by the glacier over there, and I got in a little bit close. Well, Clifford was sitting there sleeping, holding his rod, and we get by it, and I said, "Hey, Cliff, you might want to check your line," So he reels it up. He's got a sea anemone and a Dolly Varden on it. He never felt any part of it.
Well, I think I've only fished in the Derby twice.
Yep.
Once on the Bayliner with you guys, and then once it must have been on the Tiffany Lee. It was one of the last years of the Derby. I just moved home. I was always working during the Derby at the store, and you guys called me on, I think it was Sunday. It was the last day of the Derby, and you're like, "Hey, Alex caught a fish. We got an extra rod for the afternoon. If you can be at the dock at 1, we'll pick you up." So I was at the dock at 1. I forget who I got to cover the store. It was probably my mom. Came and watched the store for me so I could go fish in the Derby. We get to the other side. Had, 20 minutes, half an hour? Fish on. I think I got like 4th place in the Derby in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know why.
This is easy. I don't know why you guys put making such a fuss out of it.
Everybody talks about how hard it is to catch a fish in the Derby.
Well, that was a good year for us because I think we had 5 or 6 fish that last day.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, we ended up with most poundage. Mm-hmm. It was a
you guys
really
caught
good.
A few in the morning, and mine wasn't the only one that afternoon either.
No, it was good fishing at that time.
Oh, that was a good.
I'm hoping it'll be on the 15th that I can catch one because I have my old buddy's ashes, Lawrence Willard.
Okay.
And I'm gonna catch a king salmon, and I'm gonna dump his ashes over and let him go.
Let him go.
Yep. Because that man
That,
loved fishing.
Oh, Lawrence loved king salmon fishing.
Yep.
Yep.
He was a great, great friend.
Yeah. No, that'd be.
That was all we talked
cool.
about, from about March on, Derby's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's been so sad that we haven't, and, I always attribute the loss of king salmon to that Juneau A&B or that spring derby they have down there, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
That prime time for, and you just, unless you catch a big fish, you're not going to turn it in. I just wonder how many fish that are bound for Haines get caught during that derby. Because, there's, you look at the Golden North Derby, there's, 2,000 boats or, I don't know, I might be exaggerating, but I think
there's a lot of boats out there.
A lot of boats.
Yeah.
And that spring one, I think, if you follow, the runs, it started its downward trend about that time.
Do they still have that?
No.
I was going to say, I haven't heard about it for a long time.
I think it's Clinket and Hyde, isn't it?
Is it Clinket and Hyde that did that?
I don't know, but to me, that was the beginning of the decline of our run.
My dad always tells the story of Hugh Reetz's dad, coming in when he was a biologist, and really upset about what they were doing at Tanini up here, and just milking the eggs and the sperm out of them, and
sending them off to someplace else.
Send them place somewhere else, and just leaving the carcasses on the bank. My dad. He told me that story several times about just.
Well,
how
they need to be
upset
in the
he
water,
was
if nothing else.
that he hadn't seen anything like it, and just really upset with.
Well,
the way
Doug,
that
I
was
went
handled.
up there one time. The river was high, and I'd never been up past Harold Bolesky's cabin, and I'm going, good going, check it out. And I get up there where they have that pen. There was, I don't know how many male king salmon and female king salmon, but the males, they got a big nose, and there were just nothing left, from hitting the fence.
Oh,
it was, and that was, for how many years did they do that we really didn't know, because they never put one egg, they said, oh, these are for the pens. Well, they only did the pens for about 5 years.
Yep.
And that wasn't in a continuous row, that they had them, I think, 3 years out at out there, by the ferry terminal.
I think it was only 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it made some fish come back to the Chilkoot. I mean, there was a lot of people
back in there.
But as far as, there, and I could never figure out, why they didn't put them in Tai Sankey. Because they always had the wind issues,
I think probably it wasn't on the road system. It was going to be harder for them to monitor it or have somebody over there. But the level of success coming back would have been much greater.
Yeah, because they pay. You look at DiePack. They pay somebody down here to feed all them dogs in Boat Harbor.
Yeah.
You know, they pay them. You know, what the heck? It's going to be 6 weeks. You know, but now they got the zero checks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got them king salmon that they're raising in Sitka that, you know, they never spend any time. You know, they're hatched and, you know, I don't know at what stage, you know, that they release them.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't spend any time in the hatchery. You know, they just let them go. And they seem to be doing real well.
Yeah, without Pullen Creek over in Skagway, without them doing that or anything, it's bleak for king salmon up here. But I'm interested to see in 2 weeks what's going to happen here.
Not if you talk to the charter boats. I heard of one charter boat caught and released 1,000 fish.
And I have issues with that.
I do too, because you know that you're probably going to have 20 to 30%. And you know, back when you know the real smart people that cared about the fish in the fishing game, you know, this I'm talking 40, 50 years ago, you know, they said that these fish up here reared, you know, in the Chilkat, seemed to rear just, you know, inside waters of Southeast. So, you know, I don't know. It's just really sad because you know, I've been out in the Derby there where trying to catch a fish. You know, we went through 12 dozen herring one day.
Yeah.
I mean, with the 26 to 27.5-inch shakers, you know. I mean, you couldn't even get down through them. There was so many. It was just horrible. Because you know that, you know, a bunch of them are going to die because, you know, and we try to reel them in as fast as we could because, you know, they weren't, you know, we didn't want to stress them any more than we had to, you know, get them in the net and get them out, you know. But sometimes you got to weed through them to get to the big ones, and I think we did get some big ones, but I just wonder about fishing games sometimes. I just think that their whole staff has changed and their whole outlook on the fish have changed, and you know, I don't know if the board of fish, you know, because you know it seems like us Alaskans that live here year round, you know, we just don't get the opportunity. I had to go to Sitka to catch king salmon. Went to Sitka 3 or 4 times.
My take on it right now is like with the regulations they have for king fishing, and it's going to be open for a little bit before people see this, but it's when you have the fishermen saying you need to be more conservative, when the people that are managing it are less conservative with the people that want to catch the resource, that should be the opposite. The people that are managing the resource should be more conservative than the people that want to catch it, in my view. And when you have pushback from the people that have been itching to get out there and catch a king salmon, when these people like yourself that haven't been for 11, 12 years now, like love to catch a king salmon, and when those people are going, I think you guys are going too far on this, and like, no, it's all good. That leads me to wonder, like, no, I think you probably, if that's the way this is playing out, I think you guys are on the wrong side of this.
Well, I think that it's because they don't know anymore, Doug. They don't know what these fish do here. They won't take anything of people like myself that I'm not going to say that I'm a genius or I know everything about king salmon, but
well, you've been fishing them for 60 years.
I know that every year, you know, they say, well, there ain't going to be any fish out there, you know. It seems like every, you know, since when I first started, you know, used to be by June 10th or whatever, you couldn't hardly catch a fish unless you were in Pyramid Harbor or Anchor Point on the other side. You know, they were all balled up there, but seems like, you know, gill netting and, you know, you seemed like all of a sudden, you know, holy shit, you know. And every one that I catch, Douglas, that is not dead, I slip in the water. I mean, I do the same thing with the steelhead. You know, I don't know where they're going, but, you know, to me, they're a sport fish, and that's what, you know, that's where I enjoy the fish is, you know, on a rod and reel, or I'd love to see my grandson catch a steelhead, or I'd love to see my grandson Lucas catch a king salmon, you know, and Liam, you know, they're young, and I mean, I remember the first one I caught, and it's still with me. It's you know, something that I really, really enjoy. And I don't know if it's the fact of trying to catch them or actually catching them that I like the most, you know. Do I, you know, because I'm a guy that, I look at all these lures, well, sometimes I'll fish 10 fish. I know what's going to work, go to, but,
We might
Stuart's
have to
been,
cut that part out, Marty. We don't want everybody else to know what Charlie's go-to is.
Stuart's going to be fishing a fly, or, he does a lot of other stuff too, but, you talk to all these trollers, and up here about, I don't know, 10 years ago, they all talk about the Black Death. It was a hoochie, and it was a black hoochie, and it had like a feather thing in it, underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And God, we went to Excursion Inlet one day, or one year. We were going to we were going to go halibut fishing, and weather got so crappy that we made it across from Pleasant Island, because we were tied up to that dock that used to be at Gus Davis, and that now it's back at Gus Davis. Anyway, we were tied up there, and it was 6-8 foot, and tied up to the dock, and and I said, it ain't gonna make it. So I started idling. Lawrence Willard was with us, and and Greg Richmond, and I started idling over to go. I was gonna head for Excursion Inlet because I knew the dock was protected in there. But getting there was no fun. I mean, every wave over the...
Oh, I bet. Jeez.
Oh, it was nasty. And Chauncey was, white-knuckled, hanging onto the seat. But we made it, and everybody made it. Lawrence, he gave up and went in and anchored up, right next to Pleasant in a little cove there. Mm-hmm. And, he came a couple hours later. But we went into Excursion, and we had these black bugs that I got from Andrew, and I think we caught 6 fish in about 2 hours on that thing. Dang. It's amazing, but you get all these, my wife, what she fishes? A herring aid.
Herring aid.
Yep. And I mean, she has fished them since the first day that she went fishing with me, and that's all she'll fish. And she catches as many fish, if not more. Yeah. And you know what, Doug? I think it's she never uses a flasher, and she always catches bigger fish. So I think that them flashers must do something to the bigger fish or whatever, because I always catch them. They're always 23 pounds,
But you still keep using the flasher.
I know it, because I catch fish.
Because you catch fish?
Yeah. And that's, I don't know.
Well, I think there's something to be said, though, as much as I like that first king salmon in the spring, it's hard to beat that for fish. But being out there on a nice day, just slowly trolling.
Well, it's slowly now. You got to get a boat that'll go slow.
You got to get a boat that'll slow, but whether it's on the far side or going through Twin Coves or whatever, and just you're looking around and
just enjoying it all.
Just amazing.
And then when you get that little ding,
and then you get that, and your heart rate goes up, and then it could be a false alarm.
You could be 3/4 asleep, and you'll see that, and you'll be right awake in a moment. Yeah.
No, I think it's the king salmon. It's the fishing for them is just as much of a deal as actually catching anything. Because usually some people go out by themselves, but usually it's 2, 3, 4 people out on a boat.
Well, that's the thing. It's a family thing for us.
It's a social thing, and
my granddaughter Brooklyn loves to catch king salmon. Tiffany, loves to catch king salmon. That's what's really funny, though. Back when the Derby, when we first started getting involved in the Derby, they didn't want nothing.
They didn't want anything to do with it.
No, it wasn't until Stuart, Alex Denoyer. Yeah. He
was the one that caught the fish. That's how. If he hadn't caught one in the morning, I wouldn't have been out there in the afternoon with you.
Well, Alex was out with Stuart, and Stuart was out in a jet boat. I think my jet boat, or I don't know what jet boat it was. I think it was mine. And they were trolling around Cannery Point, and Alex catch this big hog. Because before that, Stuart, was hit or miss about it. But after that, now, I mean, he's a dyed-in-the-wool king salmon fisherman. It's going to be hard for him to go now.
Yeah.
Because, crabbing starts the same day. And and
I bet he finds a way.
I'm sure he finds a way to get the pop, and
he's gonna find a way to get out there with Dad and do some trolling for king salmon.
He goes, "When are you gonna set the boat up?" I go, "Well." Soon.
Yeah, one of my favorite memories with king salmon is when Gary Lathan was working at the store, and it was first year or so after my dad had bought that Bayliner from you, and it was this time of year, end of May, beginning of June. I think it might have been right after the Derby or right before the Derby, and had to be after the Derby because I was out of school, and he came over to me. He's like, "What do you think the chances are your dad lets us use the boat tonight?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let's ask him." He says, "There's a lot of people saying there's king salmon out there. We need to go fishing." And I was like, "Well, let's go ask him." And so we asked him. He goes, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And so we go out, and it was Gary and his wife, and I think Tara Heinrich went with us. And from the cannery dock to the point, going back and forth, I think with this 8 of us, I think it was about an hour and a half, and we had 7 keeper king salmon. It was just we'd hit the same spots. Like, all right, let's go back, let's do it again. That was the most fun. It was just like boom, boom, boom. They're all nice sized fish, and yeah, I think I ate king salmon all that week.
I'll eat it till it's gone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I love it. I mean, Tony can cook it so perfectly that, the skin. The best part that I like, Doug, is the skin. When it's fried just right.
Yeah.
I peel that off, and
just eat the skin, huh?
Yeah. But
I've never been able to eat the skin off of salmon. Even smoked salmon.
Yeah. I can do it. I was gonna tell you, Hub. One of the first times I was fishing, or I shouldn't say I was fishing. Hub said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was in high school yet, and I think it was, did your mother have a sister that was married to a Minnesota police officer?
Not that I'm aware of.
Anyway, it was one of your kin.
Yeah.
And because Hub had a boat. I don't remember. I didn't have a boat.
I
had a wooden boat.
I remember there was a boat in our old garage.
Yeah.
Before it burnt down. I have no idea. I think I remember going out on it once out at Chilkoot. I never remember going out in the salt water.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was like, my God, there's this huge cabin cruiser out there. But looking back, it was
this
really,
was just
really
an
small.
open skiff, like a 16-foot skiff.
Okay.
That I didn't have a boat, when I was in high school. Anyway, Hub says, "Hey, can you take my?" I don't remember who it was. Shit, that was 60 years ago, Doug. And he goes, "Can you take him fishing?" And he said, "I heard you catch a couple fish." I said, "Well, I don't know much about it, but." So we go out, and geez, he caught like 4 fish, just bam, like that. I mean, it was, and he was the most ecstatic guy you ever seen. And I mean, it just around Cannery Point,
right
down
the point
and back around, God. Yeah. I was some kind of a kin to your mother.
Okay.
Whether brother, she doesn't have any brothers.
No, just the 2 sisters.
Yeah. It was one of her sister's husbands, I think. And I thought he was a Minnesota police officer.
When was it? About 68?
69 or 70.
68 or so. Yeah, because I remember Scott came up with his sister and Scott Pattison.
Well, I took Scott.
Well, that was
ptarmigan hunting.
That was in like 68 or 69.
No, that was in 70.
That was later when he came up.
Okay.
But I remember they came up with Jan and Dick, my mom's younger sister, and her husband.
Okay.
But Dick was out of the military, but he wasn't a policeman.
No.
So that was.
I don't know. All I know is, we went out and it was like easy peasy. I mean, you just go around the corner and wham, and you go back the other way, and wham, go back the other way, and wham, and he was just tickled pink, and so was Hub,
Perfect.
because he'd arranged it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So what have we missed? What else is there about Charlie's story that we're not touching on?
I don't know, Doug. I like to shoot,
What is it about? Because you have, when I was younger, you're always into guns, but the last few years, you're trying to get like the tightest group you can, right? You're just really focused on precision now as much as anything.
I started shooting down in Arizona. I got into the club here probably 8 or 10 years ago, and I was having, I bought that Anschutz, And I mean, it wasn't a bench rest gun like everybody else had, but it was, you know, a really good shooter. And, you know, them guys down there, you know, they talk about, you know, I know that, you know, the Roy Hibbard is, you know, probably the best shooter down there. You know, I mean, he shot silhouettes, you know, across the course, you know, everything. And he holds most of the course records down there. But, you know, just trying to do that, you know, and you know, I win some and I lose some. You know, I've been, you know, I'm usually in the upper three. You know, there's usually up to 10, 12 guys that shoot there. And, you know, but the big lesson I learned was when I went to the Burger Nationals, you know, over in Phoenix, and I was shooting a 223. Everybody else was shooting a 308. And when you first sign up, you know, they have the high master class and then the master class. The master class is 90 some odd %. Well, I shot 6th out of all, you know, there was 400 shooters at that shoot.
400 shooters.
And I shot 6th in that class.
Yeah.
You know, in the FTR, which is factory target rifle.
Uh-huh.
And it's only 2 guns you can shoot, a 308 or a 223.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, it was so weird because, you know, I didn't know how to adjust the scope right, you know, for that. And I knew where I was hitting, you know, when I was shooting. I was off the target, you know, that far.
Uh-huh.
The wind was blowing so hard there, and geez, I had really good, you know, compared to the rest of the guys. You know, there was a guy from, there was people from 11 countries, and I was shooting with a guy from Scotland.
Really?
And he goes, "What are you shooting?" I said, "A 223." And he goes, "Holy crap!" Because I had beat him in that round. You know? In fact, I think I beat him in the whole.
In the whole thing?
Yeah, I only shot the 600, you know, because that's all I was really ready to do. But I mean, the accuracy, you know, I think it was, who was it? One of the great gun people said only accurate guns are interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and just recently, you know, I shoot, you know, at Arizona, I shoot every weekend, you know, sometimes twice a weekend. But the 22s have got a grip on me, like, you know, because we've been shooting this 200-yard, you know, metal plate shoot, you know, and stuff like that. And Ralph, your brother-in-law, you know, he's been doing really well, you know.
Well, the guys, when I was back at, who was it that was telling me this?
Vortex?
Vortex, I think. The guy that I was shooting with, I was telling him about your guys' 22 shoot. And he said the ballistics for a 22 at 300 yards are similar to a 6.5 Creedmoor at 1,200 yards. Yeah. So he said if you want to practice for your Creedmoor, shoot your 22 at a quarter of the range, and you're basically in the same.
You're practicing the same stuff at a fraction of the cost.
Fraction of the cost.
Yeah, because you know, you know, I've had an issue with ballistics. You know, on how much to hold, you know, because I've tried the Lapua app and I've tried, you know, the Hornady app and everything else. But I just found, you know, when I was down there, and I shoot once a month in Kingman. They have a 200 yard, very similar to what we have here. But Larry, the top guy that shoots that, you know, I asked him, I said, "What ballistic software are you using?" And he goes, because I see him look at his phone, you know, every time he, you know, he's looking at his phone, and he goes, "Straylock." And I go, huh. I never thought anything of it. And because I got the Lapua app, and you put in, you know, you put in all of your, you know, your velocity and your, you know, your sectional density and all that stuff in there. And I've got, you know, like 6 different ones to try to match my velocity that day, because the other last time we shot, Davy's velocity had dropped 40 feet per second just because of the temperature.
Temperature, okay.
And, you know, so you have to match that. So I had 6 of them loaded. Well, I got out there and the app wouldn't work.
Uh-oh.
So I didn't have any, because I had got up that morning and I had written down everything in my book. But when I left the house, when I was putting my shoes on, I set my books over on the corner of that entryway. There was a cabinet in there, you know. I just set it there and, you know, took off and got to the range and, oh, crap. Well, it's too late now. Though I didn't, I had some stuff on my stock, but that was for CCI, and so now I'm going to be deadly.
Deadly.
Yeah. Stray lock.
Stray lock.
Russian.
So that's is it just, do they have for all calibers, or is that just
No, it
22s?
works for all of them. You just put in all your stuff
Just put
in
everything in there.
Yeah.
What makes that one so much more accurate
It's
than
simple.
the others? Oh, it's just...
I mean, the Lapua one, I can't even describe. There's only 17 pages, but how do you get from this page? Because out at the range, Davey and I both had the issue. We both loaded it the day before at our house with good signal. You go out there,
Hey, don't have
and
good
then
sense,
mine went from MOA to Mills.
Oh, that totally
So
screwed you.
I'm going, I can't even,
Can't even use
I
it.
don't have a mill, you'd have
Yeah.
to figure it out. But the stray lock works without
Okay.
service.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
much better.
yes, much better. Yeah, no, that's what I enjoy right now. I mean, I still look forward to moose season, because it's a family thing. There's 3 families there now. There's Bean and Stuart, and his family, and me, and sometimes Tony goes, but she's got these little dogs, and she's afraid that the dogs are going to run off and
When
get
Brooklyn's
lost.
in town, she's usually up there
Yeah,
too.
she
isn't
usually drives the boat for
she's-
me.
Yeah, she's always up there, and
She is. I don't know how she figured this out, but Doug, she can just take that big old clunker of a boat that I have, and just sail right up the river, just like it's. And I mean, granted, she's sat by my side since she was probably 6 or 7, and she paid attention.
Yep.
Because you tell her, well, stay on the side that's got the steepest bank. If you see a sandbar, stay on that side. And I said, look for the riffles. If you see a riffle, that means it's going to be shallow. And something just went on in her head that, I
She
would
took it
feel.
all in, and
I would feel that she could take the boat up by herself from Chilcat, go to our camp.
Yep.
And I don't know if she could fix it if she screwed up, but
yeah,
I've never, she'd never had to do any of that.
that was always my issue with boats, is the motor stops running. I don't have any experience trying to get it back around. Other than start paddling. My grandpa Hub, he was always doing the maintenance on all Dad's mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, I was never over there helping him work on engines on the Bobcat or
Yeah.
anything. It was just, I was never that age or at that time, and that just always scares me to be up someplace and have a mechanical issue and not be able to
It
fix
scared
it.
Charlie the other day.
Did you?
Oh,
We thought-
when we quit twice in the river, Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about this.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go up there to the bait stand.
My grandpa's supposed to be this great mechanic, and the boat engine won't even run.
Yeah, well, it's the grandpa's fault too, because he left the key on. I hit the kill switch, It's got a kill
Yeah.
switch on the side of the tiller, and it shut it off. And I forgot about, I had put the master switch in there because Stuart, twice he burned up the whole electrical system, because something in that, leaving the, because it was hooked direct to the battery.
Yep.
It did something, then it shorted it out and melted the whole wiring harness down.
So you put the kill switch in.
I
or
put a
master
kill
switch.
or a disconnect switch
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, but then I didn't do
and then
it.
you forgot to.
Getting senile.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does stuff like that, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's pretty tough. No.
Well, I appreciate you sharing stories with us, Charlie.
Yeah.
It's been good catching up with you.
Yeah.
And I hope you catch a king salmon
I hope so
and
too.
let it loose with Lawrence's ashes.
Lawrence's ashes on him and
Yeah.
let him go up the river and take
Go
him
up
back
the
to
river.
Cluckwan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Lawrence was a dear friend of mine. We go way back. In the high school when he used to play for Cluckwan. He used to, when I was still in high school. He'd rustle me around, and because I knew him. I knew who he was. I spent quite a bit of time in Cluckwan when my dad was with the Salvation Army. I'd go up there You know, and Fritz Willard, I remember that. You know, Fritz Willard, that was, you know, they don't make people like him. I remember when he was in his 70s.
Yeah.
He'd had a big sled, Doug. A sled with a G-pole and a harness.
Okay.
And he'd pull it up right by the Presbyterian church, and he'd go all the way up the highway, you know, about where they got the plant set up there, you know,
Yeah.
the 23 mile or 4
Yeah.
mile or whatever. And he'd go down and he'd, you know, with a friggin' whipsaw and cut wood, pack it up and fill that sled up, and then he'd drag it, you know. And he said, I said, isn't that hard work, Fritz? And he goes, it's all downhill.
Well, once it's loaded, it's all
Yeah,
downhill.
I just, you
So
know,
he's going up 70 years old. He's going up there with a
he had a harness on, you know, like
Uh-huh.
a sling around, and he had that
Yeah.
G-pole on that sled.
yeah.
God,
Tough.
amazing guy. And I mean,
Tough.
there wasn't a man that made finer smoked fish than him.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad said, "I'm going to Cluckwan." Okay. I'm
Okay.
coming.
You let me
You
go.
know, I'd go down. Fritz knew that I loved smoked fish
Yeah,
too.
he knew what you
know.
were coming for.
Yeah, he'd go down and this one's done over here, grandson. He'd call me. I guess he was related to my dad somehow.
Okay.
I don't really know how for sure, but Stuart has his native name,
Does he?
the Watts. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Uh,
But yeah, I spent a lot of time in Cluckwan when I was a kid. You know, helping Fritz. You know, we'd go up and help him catch fish and cut fish, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I spent a lot of years up there in my early 30s with John and
yeah.
Tomcat and Uncle Smitty and down the smokehouse. And
Mhm.
usually it'd be John telling me what needs to be done, and then it'd be Smitty and I doing the fish.
Doing all the work.
Until John would come back and check on us again. And then Tom would come by, he's like, so,
Well,
John's got you working again.
I tell you
Yep.
what, that John, I don't know. I've had a lot of smoked king salmon, but them king salmon strips that he made,
Uh-huh.
oh my God.
That's something else, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah. I love eating that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I haven't, you know, Stuart does most of the smoke. I haven't even smoked anything. I built the smokehouse about 20 years ago, and it's full of gas cans and downriggers and stuff like that, you know, but Stuart smokes quite a bit of fish, you know, in the summertime when he gets a chance, you know. But, yeah, he does a good job, but he learned from some old, what the heck was her name? She was from Cluckwan. Lived up next near Link Fannin and them on that loop.
Oh.
Oh, God, I can't remember her name.
I can't either.
But, yeah, well, he learned from her, you know, with the Fannin kids, you know, they were all
Yeah.
buddies. And she was Mary. I think her name was Mary, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he taught him how, and it was good.
Yeah. Anything else we missed?
No, I
Yeah.
think we're good.
I look forward to hearing that you caught a fish and sent Lawrence on his way
Yep,
back up to Cluckwan.
that's what
up
I'm
the
looking
river.
for.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yep, that's my number one. I've been threatening to go out there and do it illegally.
Just do it illegally and
Yeah,
do it anyhow.
'cause he's been in my house for 10 years.
It's all right. Gonna happen this year.
Yeah, it is. It is going to
Yeah.
happen.
Better for Lawrence to be legal going up the river.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't care. I thought I should have got a permit for it or something, you know.
Yep. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charlie.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yep.